XSET are jogging through the groups right now. I'm not concerned that they're going to even potentially drop a series. They might drop a map, but I think that right now XSET has this on pretty much on lockdown. I don't think that Sentinels wins 10 rounds. Based on the play that we've seen from them so far, I'm just so disappointed by this roster.
Oh, I love a house made out of brick, but you've only got clay. You can make bricks out of that, I think, so that doesn't really work. But you know what I mean?
So that works.
Another fantastic
We got
analogy.
sand.
It's almost June. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this Valoranting episode on the 24th of May. I'm MitchMan, joined by your regular cadre of hosts, one of whom is finally back in the country. What's up, Vans? Welcome back to North America.
Thanks,
Grand
man.
Continent.
Feels great. I think, you know, it was one of those moments where like, oh, diet starts tomorrow. Diet starts now that I'm gone 2 months in Vietnam. I get back. My brother bought me some mixes to make tacos with the wife. I got cold cuts. It's a mess in on my chair in the back here because we've been cleaning out the house the whole week. It's been great, man. It's great to come back. We're still eating bad shit, but we'll get it back on track.
What's the significance of cold cuts? Is that like something that you do when you get back to Canada or what? I'm not sure I follow.
Yeah, you just leave your meat outside and cut it out.
What, in Vietnam
No.
or in Canada?
No, like cold cuts
right?
is like what? Like
Yeah.
like ham, like sliced cured meat
Yeah, I don't
that you
know.
put
I
in
just like
sandwiches.
you mentioned it specifically. It's like something you were doing as part of being back home. So I didn't.
Oh
know
yeah,
if it was
because it's
like,
I usually don't eat cold cuts. It's not that great for you, you know. So
right.
yeah.
Right.
So now I have to make sandwiches. I have to put mayo. I have to put well, mustard's good for you. Mustard's good for you, but you know I gotta eat bread. There's
Dude,
shit like that.
Yeah, I like mayo. I haven't
Yeah.
had bread in a fucking long ass time.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know what that
Yeah,
shit's
you
like
sound
anymore.
fucking angry already.
I'm not mad. I'm just wistful. You know, it's a difference. Mitch, what's going on, man? Obviously VCT EMEA actually existing. That's kind of nice. It must be nice to have some actual competition going on.
Yeah, it's nice. We had a good week of games just gone. Had a lot to do across them, and I mean, I started my day off today with the beautiful KFC Zinger Burger. So a bit of bread in there for me. It was delicious.
Diet
and just
starts
like
tomorrow.
Matt said, diet starts tomorrow, man. It's been a couple months of this, but tomorrow's the day. I can feel it.
The fucking the classic, the evergreen vanity tweet. Hey, tell us about this Fokus team. What's going on? Because I don't think anyone really expected this team to do anything. This is one obviously with Yuki and like a smattering of sort of players that have been in CS before, but they're kind of dominating.
I think it comes down to exactly what we said last week, which was like, all right, look, you guys did pretty good on week one. You've got an opportunity here to maybe legitimize yourself, but come on, you know, some tough opponents ahead. Maybe this is a team that can fight for survival, but dude, they look unbelievable. I mean, there's some names there that I will have seen before. I mean, we heard from Jonas. If you watched his watch party, you would have heard him say how he played with your boy Lewis. I think he's referencing the Blast Twitch Invitational that happened like a long time ago. What was it called? Spike Nations of Twitch. That's what it was.
Oh,
So,
right.
and
Yeah, the weird format, right?
Yeah, and there was,
Yeah.
you know, you got bonus points for shortying people and whatever. Like, it was one of those wild things. It basically looks like VCT now with the way the shorties come back. But yeah, going back to then, your boy Lewis was around like a little bit. Sure, he was content creating in the scene. He's been around, but he's not, you know, top tier player. He's not someone that really draws your eye. Rest of the roster, Yugi, definitely someone that catches your eye. The others, though, not really that well known. Very much a tier 2 kind of feel to them coming in, but they play clean Valorant. This is one of the most polished teams we've seen come out of absolutely nowhere, and it again comes back to the point that we were making in North America just a couple weeks ago. The level of Valorant at the bottom is starting to catch up. We're seeing teams emerge now that can challenge these guys that have been around a couple months. New names rising, new challengers, exactly what this stage is called, right? And Fokus, they are now actually competing for a spot to make it all the way through. In their coming games, they could make it happen. And at a minimum, they should be secured in VCT. But the way they're playing right now, I think next season this team could be, you know, aiming for the top.
What's the whole point of this shit, right?
Yeah.
This is what we kind of wanted to see, is that some of these newer teams bubble up. We're seeing it in NA as well, to maybe like a lesser degree.
NA is one thing, and I see that. I like how what catches my eye is that MitchMan's also supporting that by wearing the Mickey Mouse t-shirt to support the North American Mickey Mouse tournaments, where you know competition continues to grow in our region as well, and we're seeing those teams that aren't supposed to make it through make it, like Ghost Gaming. We probably wouldn't have said the same thing last year.
Yeah, I mean, and now I mean, I sort of saw Vanity tweeting like, Ghost Gaming are now like playing the way they scrimmed, you know what I mean? So they're starting to convert some of that performance over. Let's talk about our topics for today. If you've been watching the show for a while, you probably guessed that there's not too much complexity to this part of the show. So first up, we're going to be talking about VCT NA Week 2. OpTic get a very key victory against a very powerful opponent, although one that had some question marks over them after sort of recent developments. Then we'll go across. We'll talk about VCT EMEA. We've got Tombizz coming on the show with Mitch. That's going to be a lot of fun. Vans, once again, going to be outnumbered, and the banter, I'm sure, will be absolutely sublime. Following that, we'll talk a little bit about the sort of Ask Valorant segment. And, you know, obviously there's a bit of people reacting to the replay system or rather lack thereof. Poor Anna, sticking her up like this on the thumbnail. I don't think it's necessarily her fault, but sorry, yeah, I guess you're
awesome
big
woman,
scapegoat for
that's
this
for
one.
sure.
I'm sure we'll have some very measured takes on that one though, so you need not worry. It won't be the usual Valoranting papagery. So let's dive in. Can we let's talk about VCTNA, but we're bringing someone in to help us do that because this is what we do on this show. We like adding an extra panel here and squeezing our faces a little bit more. I think we're bringing this guy on for the first time in quite some time. I think he's been busy, we've been busy, but it's now a fated reunion, of course, is Bok. Recently announcing that he's going full-time into casting. Thanks for joining us, man. How you been?
I mean, I've been pretty good catching up on NA from this last weekend. I was not on the show. I got to watch Vansili do his best job of covering the games. You know, and MitchMan, I think it's funny you're talking about how the tier 2 scene is rising and the lower teams are starting to perform better. That's exactly how we feel about EMEA. They're slowly catching up to North America.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right. I'll let you have that one because you got the last international event, but we'll see. We'll see. Let's have this chat in 3 months, all right? Let's have that.
I love how Bok buried the lead because it actually just sounded like he was talking about how tier 2 NA teams were starting to become better. And then he fucking hit you with like the cold kipper of the fucking EMEA.
I got taken down on a ride on that one. I'll tell you, I didn't. That was a concealed punch coming in.
Yeah, that's how you construct some banter. It's good to see. Vans, take some fucking notes. All right.
What do you mean?
Some notes, motherfucker.
Oh, can you give him some lessons, man? Sort him out.
Come here. Let me hug you guys.
Oh man. All right.
Too much
respect in this
for
call
the
for me.
fans nonsense from Vans as usual.
Yeah. The usual. Let's have a look at our week 2 for NA, guys, and give me a bit of an overview here as well, because some pretty one-sided games, right? I think that, 100 Thieves fans may be a little bit disappointed. Also, FaZe, again, Luminosity's so good at just turning up and clobbering people just as they look to be sort of on the rise. I think this Ghost Gaming result was also pretty notable, but, high level, what are your guys' sort of favorite matches from this week?
I mean, honestly, I really like the Ghost series. I thought Ghost played really well. I think Guard's kind of reeling after what happened at Masters. I don't think they've really hit their footing again since they got back home. I think that TSM finding a 2-0 over 100 Thieves kind of juggles things up, because after week 1, a lot of people were praising 100 Thieves, thinking like, oh, this new roster is it's totally the best team we've seen from 100 Thieves, and then they get smacked by TSM. All of a sudden, Group A is like kind of in a state of disarray. You only have one team that's 2-0, and that's XSET, which last stage we were talking about how XSET was the team that was going to be stable. Now it looks like they're the team that's stable this time around. They're 2-0, but the rest of the group is kind of like all over the place. It very much is like kind of anyone's game for the bottom 3 seeds. I think XSET is pretty much poised to take the number 1 spot.
Yeah.
But looking at Ghost and the way they played against the Guard, it's not just the Guard underplaying. I think Ghost kind of approached the game really interestingly. I love the way they used Fade. They have great team play. The match was kind of weird if you actually look at like the string of rounds both teams were winning. I think Ghost had like 11 rounds in one half, and then the next game they kind of get bodied by Guard in the first half, and then it goes to a third map. But I do think that Ghost overall is really impressive. I think that's the key takeaway, is that this is a team we didn't even expect to do well, kind of like EG or Knights from last stage, but they're performing at a higher level than maybe we expected.
Yeah.
Vans, what do you make of Group B at the moment?
Group B?
Yeah.
OpTic. They continue to be the best. I think from watching OpTic play versus C9, that was like the Giga Beggar match of that weekend, where it was supposed to go back and forth, right? You know that title. I mean, I'm not the one that's saying it. It's fucking Golden Boy that's calling it Giga Bangers, right?
No, he got it from the fucking 2 Brits.
And every game is a Giga Banger. But I mean, to be fair, XSET and Energy was supposed to be a very good series as well. But overall, I think it's the simple OpTic looking really good. And then Luminosity continues to have like that consistency of, hey, we could actually beat any team in our group. But I still feel that they haven't had a chance to get tested yet by VC9 by the OpTic, and that's
Right.
that's going to be the coming
By,
weeks.
because they haven't played they played Sentinels and FaZe. Let's talk a little bit about this FaZe versus Luminosity matchup, right? We get Fracture, and we do see FaZe that are experimenting with the
OpTic
neon here, Baby Bay on this pick, right? The quote unquote OpTic composition. How did this play for you? Obviously, pretty close map. First half was like a 7-5. Like, are these two teams really played each other close?
Yeah, I think it's looking at LG on the attack. FaZe tried to do a lot of rounds where they're trying to anticipate where the hit's coming from. They did a lot of like these 3 hits down towards tree side with like that neon, that breach, and try to take that map control early against LG. But everything that they guessed on their attacker side was always the wrong side, where it comes from like eco round stacks to triple
so they're
pushes.
trying to cheat into sites and they're
Exactly. I think it took
Nice.
a timeout or something like that to finally realize the patterns, and then we got somewhat of a closer game on that first half. But then I think on that second half was where we finally saw, the importance of getting that type of like OpTic comp. Baby Bay was doing a good job getting behind enemy lines as well. There was like these calls where I think even Poise called on the fly. I don't think there was a lot of stuff that was really practice in terms of how this game panned out between LG and FaZe, just because, again, what was practice wasn't working out. So like on the fly calls, for example, of like a Flya going with a rolling thunder from A long hauls into spawn side to allow Baby Bay to get in that spot, pull out rotations from LG from the B to the A site, and then FaZe gets into the B site where Baby Bay is cutting like rotations. That was one of the things that was like off the fly, which is why like you got to give props to FaZe to be able to maybe figure things out on the fly. But I think that's why we had a very close game on that first map.
I mean, it wasn't just the first map, right, Bok? I think Icebox went to the wire as well, and I think Marta almost dropped 30.
Yeah, he was at 29. Went into overtime as 14-12. LG ends up taking the win. Just looking at the way FaZe played, this is kind of what we expect to see from FaZe in general on both maps. Is like a hyper-aggressive. It's not quite the Smeeg style that we've come to know and love from the, I guess, yesteryear of FaZe, back when they were dominant for like 2 months. But looking at the way they played on the first map and the way they played on this map, they were very aggressive across the map, kind of pushing LG to figure out what was going on across the map. This one went a little bit deeper than I thought it would. I actually thought we were going to see a third map. I thought we were going to go to that third and final map in the series, but doesn't end up getting there. I'm trying to remember what the third map was. I think it was Breeze. And if it got to Breeze was going to be a map that would go FaZe's direction, because I don't think LG is very good on Breeze. I like FaZe on Breeze. I think that map would have definitely leaned in their favor, and I thought they were going to take it there, but they were just struggling to get over those last hurdles. Yeah. And obviously they lose 14-12. I mean, it's unfortunate. It was a really close game, but LG just wins back-to-back rounds in overtime.
And it was also the question mark in this matchup. I think the biggest one that hangs around this FaZe roster is Fly coming into the game instead of Poach, because it was like a last-minute switch. You know, it was announced maybe a day or two in advance that Poach was going to take the bench, and then Fly is making a comeback.
Yeah.
And you're trying to figure out why. How is that going to happen? And I think Fly did a good job just stepping in those shoes, and he still fried out quite well. So I think in the long run, FaZe will be looking still pretty decent and competitive in the group.
But honestly, if it weren't for Mata, I think LG loses map 2, and I think it goes to map 3, and I think they lose that series. Mata had to step up big time for the team in order to carry them across the finish line multiple
Which he did
times.
on the first.
Yeah, he literally did everything he could to keep the team in that game, and it ended up working out for them, obviously, but it wasn't exactly the cleanest play from LG.
Funny, because Anders was saying last week that he felt like this team rose and fell on B-Dog's performance, but Marta was the one keeping them in this sort of game. But Vance, you're still feeling like maybe LG haven't really tested themselves or been truly tested based on like Sentinels and FaZe being their opponents.
Yeah.
So how do you place this team then after 2 wins?
Yeah, I think they're still falling in that middle of the pack in the group. I think when we're looking at the North American rankings in like the top 10, I'm still putting them like a 5th or 6th in terms of like that consistency. They're my XSET of the 5th and 6th in terms of consistency, and I'm hoping to see that it's going to change where they're going to play against the Cloud9, where they're going to play against OpTic. But the thing too with B-Dog, when we're talking about that, I think I do agree at some point with what Anders was saying is like the rise and fall of how B-Dog performs. Because in that game on the first week against Sentinels, if it wasn't for B-Dog popping off on Chamber on Bind, then it was potentially even Sentinels winning that game. So now that you know that Sentinels are, in a rocky, shaky position at the beginning of this stage, and they're still able to make things very close and competitive against the two teams that they unfortunately lost to. It comes to show where, against the stronger teams of the group so far, how will this fare out?
Yeah, here's the thing though, Vance. It doesn't really matter in the end because if LG wins next week against EG, they make playoffs because they'll have the tiebreakers over Sentinels and FaZe. The best record that those teams could get is 3-2 at this point. They would be 3-0, so the worst they could get is 3-2. They'd be guaranteed at least the 4 seed. So really, like what happens against Cloud9 and OpTic is water under the bridge. Obviously, placement in the bracket is going to matter, but if LG find the win next week, which in theory they should, obviously EG beats Sentinels, so that kind of juggles things up, makes people doubt what they're potentially capable of. But if LG win, they're in.
Honestly, that's a good matchup. I'm not gonna lie. Looking at that group, an LG versus EG is actually a very nice matchup to be a witness of, outside of the C9 and Cloud9, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah, I mean, do you think the strength of schedule then has just helped LG lock up their playoff spot here?
I feel
like it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
How interesting. Yeah, we'll follow along that as we go. Let's talk about next match because we are still continuing to see Sentinels struggle to find their footing. First phase, now evil geniuses that Sentinels are unable to come up with the goods against. Something's got to give for this team right now. I mean, they brought in the coach, they brought in Kenpeki as well. So, you feel like that's pretty solid. I know that Anders has been saying Apoth is the best controller in North America. Really talking this guy up on the Twitter. But let's talk about how this match went, because Sentinels have a decent sort of first half. They string their 5 rounds together on the attacking side, but they peter out a little bit here. Again, it's a close map, but Sentinels are searching for that secret sauce, guys. They're at the bottom of the packet. They've not got there yet, clearly.
Yeah. I'm largely uninspired by the way that Sentinels plays the game right now. I feel like they really haven't adapted too much to match the meta of the current game. It feels like they get bailed out a lot by individual play. Even that first map was a little bit closer than maybe it should have been, and that was mostly because of players like Dapper who stepped up huge at various points. There were still rounds, though. There was one round where Dapper drops an ult in mid, and it pushes the player's tree into the A site, so then when they actually go for the A site take, everyone's just kind of right there. That was brilliant, but we saw that one round. We didn't really see stuff like that enough that I was like, whoa, Sentinels looks like a different team. They still very much look bland. They are the skim milk of NA Valorant right now. And it's disappointing because they have so much talent on the roster. And I do worry. They were once the Kings, and now it feels like they're in this labyrinth being chased by the Minotaur. And the Minotaur's name is roster changes. If Sentinels doesn't find success, I feel like this team is probably going to fall apart, only because your star players aren't going to sit around when you're failing for this long.
I am lactose intolerant, so skim milk is actually not too bad for me. So I'm going to go with the hope and still believe that, this might work out for Sentinels in the long run. Because honestly, I mentioned this before. I think Sentinels is like on a baby step, kind of like a rebuild kind of thing, where you don't want to do like a huge roster shakeup, but you're trying to figure things out. So Raucus comes back in. Okay, finally, they have a coach. Let's knock that storyline out of there. Then it's Kenpeki coming in to support TenZ. And he's been doing a pretty decent job at it as well. And then Sick is going from the flex role over to the Omen role. And I asked, actually, the stats guy that you guys have here, Bach, I guess, where you used to have. But we're looking at the comparisons of the ADR, ACS, and the impact that that Sick has versus Zoms before. And Sick actually has a lot more ADR and ACS compared to Zoms and still throws really good utility for the team. So I think now where Sentinels has an issue is the agent, the meta currently right now. Very similar to the Guard, actually, where you're seeing a lot more raises in all of these games and a lot of these compositions and the value that raise brings now that you're actually putting most of your jet players onto a chamber. And I haven't had a chance to see TenZ play a chamber yet, and Dapper has tried it out.
Well, it's because Kenpeki and Dapper play the chamber, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you actually want to go for that change, it's like, okay, TenZ is going to be the one that's going to be able to op because he's a pretty good opper still. He could pretty much frag out. He could still do headhunter headshots, in my opinion, with the skills that he has. So put TenZ on a chamber. Then you're going to have to need somebody that's going to play a Raze. Nobody else right now in this roster could potentially play a Raze.
Sick? Can you not
Sick
play
could.
Raze?
Sick could play any agent he wants. Sick is like ridiculously versatile. It's just,
Sick
do you wanna
can,
take
but
him
I
off of
think
that?
I think this would fit. This would fit Kenpeki a little bit better, in my opinion. I think Kenpeki would look pretty good as a Raze as well. and then you're going to be able to put somebody like Dapper onto like a smoke player. Try to do that whole composition shakeup into trying those different roles into those people, and then see how Sick is going to play then as the chamber actually. Yeah. So Sick is gonna have to go chamber, and then you're gonna have Kempeki going as the
He's never played
as the raise. He's never played it, but I mean, it could still work
Doesn't mean
out.
he can't. Sure.
Yeah, So there's that mix that there's that still that potential that Sick or Tens could play that chamber, do that compositional shakeup, and see how that pans out. Because I think they're running out of options at this point as well, because they have so many players that are uncomfortable into that raise role.
Let's roll the icebox. Let's roll the icebox clip while I ask this question. Do you think that Sentinels have fully explored all the possibilities available to them with Kempeki in this roster yet? You said they're running out of time, they're running out of ideas, but I mean, you also have a new player that can play apparently a ton of stuff.
Yeah, he's playing it here, so
yeah. I mean, I think there's very much room for growth and change with the roster they currently have, but I think it's going to have to come from like a leadership level. They're going to have to really like evaluate how they approach each map, how they approach practice on each map, the agent compositions they want to adjust to. In general, I feel like teams like Sentinels have been the most unwavering. Like if they like a certain style of play or a certain setup, that's what they're going to play, and they don't care what the meta says. They're just going to stick to it. Whereas like you have teams like Cloud9 or OpTic who are currently in a position that Sentinels used to be in, and they're the ones who change their agent compositions even week to week. So I think that Sentinels needs to be more flexible outside of just one player. Like Sick is insanely flexible, but you need to see more flex from the rest of the roster, not just him.
Actually, yeah. Now that I think about it, Sick, has been playing some raise on maps like Bind, for example, right? So if now you put him back onto that raise and Kempeki goes into a smoke or something like that, it's not too much of a change. And then allow putting somebody onto a chamber. Again, it comes down to that. You need. I think you're at the point where you need somebody to play more raise into your team, and that's going to shake up a little bit the composition for the rest. And I'd love to see that change. It's because the next game it's do or die, right? Bach mentioned it before. They're 0-2. If they're 0-3, they don't make it through the playoffs. So at that point, it's just throw all your eggs into the basket for like one more gamble. And if it shatters, it shatters. If no eggs hatch, I mean, then, it is what it is.
It's a long off season. So Sentinels will definitely be in a position to make the changes if they sort of have to.
Because I don't think they're in a good spot for LCQ, right? I don't think they've gotten any points or something like that. I haven't had a chance to look at the.
They're not in a great spot. I think in general. So I think this was probably one of the most. You might disagree with me. Obviously, we had OpTic C9, but this is one of the most interesting matchups this week to me because
paper for sure.
We have two teams that are playing each other a decent amount. Actually, I think these two teams played in the qualifiers, right? I think TSM and 100 Thieves played in the upper bracket of the qualifier to get in and such. And these two teams feel like they're in similar places to me, at least in terms of narrative, right? They're once great teams that are reforming and having to sort of find their way forward. And the Hopium has been at an all-time high for 100 Thieves in the past, right? We got DDK on the show. We talked to him about an hour. Everyone loved what he had to say. At the same time, teams punching out some serious results, in their matches, in their qualifying games. But let's talk about this series because I think Split is a 100 Thieves pick here. It doesn't. I think it's like this halftime is 8-4 for them. It doesn't really pan out that well for this team, and I kind of like it because we're seeing the Cypher again come back up, which is maybe a bit more of a which is something that people have maybe hinted we could expect to see more of going forward.
I think overall with 100 Thieves picking up this map, sorry Mark, I'll let you go right after, but the 100 Thieves, this has been their bread and butter, right? I think they've maybe lost once onto this map against NYFU ever since they came back into this stage 2, and Derek seems to be just on point in terms of knowing how to play this map. He's so good as a Sage on this map. He was landing like insane classic shots on the first map and even on the second map when they were getting thrashed by TSM on Haven. But I think overall for the rest of the team, there was a little bit like it was lackluster a little bit. I think even when you're looking at Asuna's performances on Split, where it's always been like so good, he actually was shut down quite a few times by TSM. So I think it's really on GMD and on Sabrosa on the amount of work that they've put together of course, with their coach to be able to shut down 100 Thieves with the amount of footage that you've gotten on this team.
Well, not only that, TSM played 100 Thieves on Split in the qualifier. So
Yeah.
like they
right.
had an understanding of what to expect.
Yeah.
I actually didn't think we were gonna. I thought we were gonna go from Split to Icebox because Icebox was a pretty close game that went in favor of TSM. I thought TSM would be able to work out the kinks.
100 Thieves banned it, right?
Yeah. Well, that was their second ban. The first ban was actually. Let me see. What do I got here? First ban was actually Acend, which makes sense. That's a really good map for TSM. TSM banned Fracture because that's a really bad map for them. That's their perma right now. So you end up on the maps we end up on. But I was looking at the third map and I'm like, oh man, Bind is in the map pool. If this goes 3, this is very similar to some of the games we saw earlier, like the FaZe LG game. If it goes to that third map, it's very likely going the other direction. But the fact that they picked up Split turns everything around. All of a sudden, this is looking really good for TSM, and that's what ends up happening. But I think TSM just took lessons that they learned from the last time they played Split, because it wasn't that long ago, and they turned it into success. It was still a close game, and 100 Thieves definitely fought pretty hard, but TSM just kind of eked it out there towards the end with a couple of like really promising rounds. I think in this final round, it was like Gimon gets a 2K in heaven, completely opens up the map, and then they end up in a 1v2, but they still end up winning the round because they have the Viper's Pit. It was good adaptation from TSM at times. 100 Thieves definitely tried to do everything that they could, but it was definitely a close game. Probably could have gone the other direction if you have like 1 or 2 rounds that just go the other way. There was a lot of 1v1s and 2v2s, 2v1s that happened pretty consistently in the last like 10 rounds. So any of those changes the other direction, it's a win for 100 Thieves, and we're going to that third map.
But it seems like they get broken here in this first map, 100 Thieves, because their Haven, we can move on to that if you guys like, was not particularly good. I think they get bundled out by sort of bad economy. I think they actually managed to win the bonus in the second half, 100 Thieves, but they can't turn it into or win against the bonus. Excuse me. They can't really turn it into anything.
Yeah. TSM just had the ball rolling there on their attacker side. I feel like 100 Thieves had a hard time really reading how...
he's 24-6.
Yeah. And a Neon coming into this one too, trying to bring out a little bit more North American OpTic Neon onto this map, which I think even that changed for OpTic now. So props to OpTic for being ahead of the curve. But yeah, it feels like 100 Thieves didn't really have a read into this whole game. The timing was a little bit off in their rotations. For somebody that, for myself, that usually commends Will to play very, very well as a Jet on this map with like BBG in the past. He actually was shut down quite a lot as well on trying to get map control.
I think he goes 4-1 on first kill, first death at least.
Yeah.
So he's still functioning to some degree, but I feel like, obviously the rest of the team, or if there's contact on other parts of the map, it seems like this team kind of struggles. You can see like this constant pressure in long right from 7, just trying to make his way into this A side. I mean, this is a fucked up clip. I mean, this is gross.
7 looked good. 7 looked pretty good, man, on this Neon.
And this is kind of like what we were saying when we were talking about some of the other teams who are a little bit less likely to try these new agent comps. Like, we saw really good play from teams working Neon into it. We saw great play from Fade all weekend long. I think much better than we saw in week 1. But you don't really see that from some of those other teams. But one of the things you mentioned, Will was 4-1 in first blood, first deaths. 4 of those came in the second half on the attacking side when they were already down 9-3. He was 0-1 in the first half. In fact, it was 8 first bloods to 4 first deaths for TSM in that first half, and 3 of those first deaths were Subrosa. He wasn't really doing anything. So, most of the action that was going on early was favoring TSM. They were finding themselves in advantageous positions. It's hard to beat that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the continuous hits into the B site with like early A control was avoiding Will pretty much as well on Will's defender half. So good on TSM to get that real preparation. And I really thought that third time is a charm for 100 Thieves against TSM here, because they're usually the type of team that after a loss is able to bounce back quite well, but TSM is really looking to be their kryptonite.
Well, like 20 seconds into the round, it's the 2v2.
Yeah.
Both these teams put so many resources in A-Long and in sewer, right? Because constantly it looks like Seven's trying to just like play fast towards that spot, and maybe that's why Will was sort of positive first kill, first death, because he's taking contact against that Neon and winning, but the entire rest of the fucking TSM teams there.
One of the other things that was going on here, too, is like some of the rounds that 100 Thieves won were force buys, obviously because their economy was kind of trash. So they even got rounds that maybe they shouldn't have if TSM just played it a little more carefully. They kind of caught TSM a couple of times. That makes this look closer than it really is. But I mean, this final situation, it's just down to the 1v1, and the shots come through. He got the spike halfway. Derek really couldn't do much. TSM takes it 13-6.
Yeah, not a lot to say about that last map, and obviously plenty of room for improvement there from 100 Thieves. Let's carry on then, because I want to talk about our top team in Group A, right? XSET fall short of the cutoff, considering Iceland qualification, but everyone's still expecting a hell of a lot from this team. Obviously it was no longer so recent that Cryocells comes in and joins this roster, but XSET are making good on their promise to start this VCT campaign pretty strong. They go up against an NRG team who has been revitalized, obviously, with with what maybe Hayes sort of brings to this team, and I guess like the mix around that they did have. But XSET look insane in this series. This is one of the less close matches I think that we got.
I mean, I'm just gonna say
in the first half. That was it.
I love EU on Fade. I thought he played Fade pretty well. I thought this was one of the better examples of Fade. It was basically Ghost and Energy that had the best examples of Fade gameplay throughout the weekend. Even though we saw other teams do it, I think they handled it the best. But EU looked really good on this map on Fade. Just solid play. Obviously, it doesn't do enough to get them over the finish line, but I was quite impressed by how Energy approached things with Fade.
Yeah, I would say that I saw a little bit less out of Fade from EU on this map. It was more on just EU fucking fragging out than seeing, like, for example, I agree with you though, Mark. The way that EU played, for example, Fade on Ascent last week when they're going through their execs, fucking sick. But I think on this map here, there was, especially on XSET's defense, it was going back and forth where they're trying to figure out Energy a little bit more, because they were starting to get losing that at early map control. I think Cryocells was getting shut down quite early as well, where he's not able to like really shine as that chamber. And then at some point they're like, okay, let's try to push somewhere. And then we saw with the Bulldog, I mean, EU's just owning them with a triple Bulldog kill, aiming ADSing down that spot. So I think based on that, for the back and forth, Energy had a pretty good read on how to fight against XSET on XSET's defense. There was even a couple of rounds where I was like, oh, I thought this was really weird. I think in 2 occasions, Death had Rolling Thunders, and he was using them mainly to stop an attack, then trying to playing for a retake with the team, just because the position that they had for XSET was actually quite good. And the example is basically Cryocells is pushed up as a chamber towards Showers, where he's watching a TP, and then they have a trademark on short A, and then a 4-player stack on B. So technically, they have the right numbers. So now when you're trying to throw the Rolling Thunder on the defense, the plan is to hopefully stop Energy on the attack, and Energy TPs back into the A side, where Cryocells could just up and down and TP back to heaven, and they play the retake that way. But Energy just had more utility with the execution on the B site, and I guess that's one of those moments where the Prowler from EU actually helped out, because it came into a combination with a paint shell for the frag. So overall, I think they were able to push XSET back quite well on their defense, but on the attack, XSET had the whole read.
I mean, one of the things.
Wake Mitch up or what?
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing.
I think he's eating chicken wings.
We're talking about the better region, so he's just fading out.
No, he's actually forehead on the desk taking notes.
Oh dear.
Immune on VMix apparently. So there we go.
Are you immune on VMix? That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's how checked out he was. He was trying to just like, not even having audio
Cruise
track
through,
on
man.
the show. He's like, yeah, take that. I don't need that.
It's so good.
Okay. I want to talk about our last. I left this one for last, and I actually tricked our production team by skipping it because I think this is like. I think that this for me is one of the most. The guard used to be, I think, part of this equation for me, but this is one of the most interesting barometers to check OpTic with. Is the match up against Cloud9. Now, obviously, I think, I don't think anyone particularly feels like Cloud9 won the trade with T1 in terms of, Curry coming over towards this team. But the guy's got a lot of experience. I mean, Curry had to kind of do everything on that T1 roster, including stepping into like an IGLing role. Right? The guy really just demonstrated a willingness to just adapt on that team. So he earned my respect, I think, during his stint on that team because of just how he stepped into all these different roles. But I want to talk about this matchup because his first map, obviously, Icebox is a Cloud9 pick. So, we know they're pretty comfortable here in general. The fade from Zeppa is pretty frightening. We're seeing a lot of players get a lot of value out of that pick. Zeppa definitely being one of them here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's very similar to Sick in that he's incredibly flexible and versatile. So it doesn't matter what agent he plays, he's gonna play it well. I do like his fade play, but like kind of like what Vans was saying about EU, how it was mostly like gunfights and aim duels, not so much the utility. I feel like when I was watching this game back, it didn't really feel like I saw Zeppa going nuts with the fade utility. It was more just like advantageous positions and catching players off guard. Not quite what we saw from some other players, but. I mean, it was obvious that Icebox was going to go the way of Cloud9. This is a map that they're usually pretty strong on. This is one they feel very comfortable on. I think if you just looked at the picks and bans in this series, you assumed a third map just because of the direction it goes. It's like, oh, you know, Cloud9 gets one of their better maps. OpTic gets one of their better maps. And then it's a coin toss. You know, that third map ends up being... It could go either way. You end up on Haven, which makes sense. The series was poised to be one of the stronger series. I like what we saw from Cloud9 in general on Icebox, but I wasn't particularly surprised by what we saw. It was kind of what I expected to see.
Yeah.
Was this a good series? Because both these teams slapped the crap out of each other on their map picks, right? It doesn't exactly make for
I
compelling
struggled with
watching.
that this morning. I was asking myself that same question. I think
it
that...
was.
I think it was better than EG Sentinels. I think that the EG Sentinels game was actually probably one of the worst series of the week. But this was better than that at least.
The thing for me for C9 and OpTic is this first map for C9 worked out quite well because with Curry now coming into the team, it's kind of like, okay, we have to slot him to something. Even though he hasn't played Viper in a very long time with T1 in the past few months. You still saw a little bit of that, okay, Viper stay inside spawn, Viper get some lurks like he was doing in his T1 role back then, and also doing that Reyna lurk onto Icebox. And I think that's probably one of the big reasons why C9 were able to take that first map. It was just a simple plug-and-play of, like, Zeta and Curry in that role. Because if you guys didn't know, Zeta was also playing that map before they got traded out. Then you get into the other two maps where now the flex, the agent composition is different because now Vanities has to play like the Sova for the team since they don't have Zeta anymore. It's not going to be Curry going to that one. Curry's staying as a controller.
Really uncomfortable for them.
Exactly. So I think you need a little bit of adjustment from there. And then Curry had to play an Omen where his paranoias sometimes worked, sometimes wasn't the best. So they need a little bit more time into readjustments going into the later weeks. But I still find that it's also on them having to change that and also learning how OpTic plays, for example, a fucking Yoru on Acend. They played it fucking amazingly.
Let's fucking talk about this. Let's talk about this Ascend comp, Bok, because this is wild. It's obviously it's not just the fade, but it's the fade Yoru Omen. There's a hell of a lot of fucking edginess going on here.
I think the casters were saying it. There's like a ton of opportunities for cheese with the way this was set up because you can use so many of these ports to just get Yoru on site, and that's what they were doing. Like Victor was able to basically TP on A site like 80% of the rounds. It was some insane number. He was constantly getting into the back of site, and then he would use the ult to get up into like heaven and completely just you watch him from like someone else's perspective, and you just see this guy like speed demoning in circles
like
trying
Neon.
to find everyone. Yeah, exactly. Playing exactly as if he was Neon without the speed modification. So basically using the port in replace of that and then using the ult like Neon, but I can't be seen, so I'm just going to run around and do stupid crap and spot people out. And it worked. I mean, a large part of that was off the util that was coming in from his teammates to kind of make it hidden, like you didn't know it was happening because they were flashed or what have you. So I thought they actually played it quite masterfully, especially when you figure out like they've got Omen, Fate, and Breach. So there's like 3 ways they can mask the audio that Yoru is working with.
Yeah, we already gave like a lot of props into FNS in the previous weeks of like playing the Breach on this map, which looks really good on the amount of space you could actually gain with a fault line on this map, playing like from market or whatnot, which is why I thought they were going to do that. But even when you're looking at OpTic on the attack, it's not only on the utility and how they pop inside the site with how a Yoru has in terms of abilities, but it's also how many fakes he could actually pull for this team to allow these executions to happen. Because watch that game back. There's a couple of like these rounds where you even have Yoru setting up his decoy down on mid side, and he's not like turning it on right away, right? He's leaving it there. You take mid control for a bit, then you fall back. They're getting ready to split into the A side. He throws a fucking TP. He could even fake TP and then start throwing a decoy up on mid side, and his decoy is also going to trigger the trademark from Chamber in that mid side. So then C9's probably thinking, okay, there's a little bit of mid control, but no, there's actually nobody fucking there. And then it becomes like a huge hit into a 3-2 split into the A site, and then it just overwhelms C9 in the end because they have less numbers into the site. So to see this type of shit come out from a coach that talked about cringe comps and they're doing the cringiest things, that's fucking awesome to watch. I love how this is why I'm saying OpTic is at the point right now where they're at the top, but they're still continuing to evolve. They're actually now one of those teams where it's like, you know, you praise Fnatic of being at the forefront of trying to find new metas. The same thing, for example, with Mech. But now you're seeing it from OpTic. They're putting good numbers on top of that, and they're also showing why. Like, they won Reykjavik, and people have to start watching these VODs a little bit more. It's not now NA trying to copy shit from other regions. It's just NA's coming out with a lot of cool stuff thanks to OpTic.
And how do we characterize, I guess, the end of this series then? Because I feel like that is the, you know, Haven obviously is where we finally get a test of these two teams on a map where they're maybe approximately, you know, equivalent. OpTic ran away with the game. This is obviously the last little bit of Senti. This is the last round, but I do want to move on to talk about Haven quickly before we move on. Yeah, he has a pretty good map, but yeah, was it like 7 rounds in a row, 8 rounds in a row on defense to sort of win it here? So what is going on? Because Cloud9, they win that pistol on their attacking half, and then they just they can't get anything going on these sides, which is kind of wild, right? You think of a team like C9 especially is, you know, going to be able to put it together. Is this to do again with the sort of the mix-up they've had and then the sort of player swap? Because not that real common, I think, to see teams just stuffed completely attacking a 3-site map.
So, you know, if you watch this game back, what you'll see in like the middle of the game was Mitch was like a thorn in their side. Like, he was constantly on the flank. He would lurk through B and he would catch him on the backside of A, or he'd lurk through B and catch him on the backside of C. And he did that like multiple rounds in a row. And that's what put Cloud9 at 10-6. So 10-6, OpTic calls a timeout, and they go over everything, and they realize, like, okay, we need to be a little bit more aggressive, but we also need to watch for these flanks. And it's at that point that things start to turn around. You start seeing Cloud9 kind of get bounced around the map. I think this round specifically, Vic plays up short, comes back, hits the showstopper, and now they have to save. Like, the time is 20 seconds left, and it's a 3v2. They have no sight control. The spike is down. They've got someone on the flank. Like, this round completely falls apart, and that's how the rounds started to go. Like, OpTic started getting the timing right, and they also started flanking themselves. And the round right after this, Ye's going to flank and get a 3K from Garage. Like, he has this great lurk coming through from mid. And then you get a flawless round. Follow it up. That's the flawless round. You get a flawless round right after. The next round, 4 up. OpTic like completely turned things around off the back of that timeout once they just discussed everything that Cloud9 was doing on their attacking side. And Cloud9 never adjusted. They just couldn't seem to fix it. We didn't see Cloud9 do the same thing. We did not see Cloud9 call a timeout and say, hey, we're losing a lot of rounds. What are we going to do? They kind of just kept trying to play through the game. I think that's a bit of a mistake, but it ends up, you know, a win for OpTic.
I thought it was interesting, just quickly, that we didn't see Victor play the Neon here.
Yeah.
And instead, he opts to sort of pick up the Rays. What do you guys reckon?
Yeah, I think overall it was a nice testament to see like what was working, or is the old meta based on the 2 comps still work, right? Because C9 had great success with this comp with the previous meta. And then so did OpTic playing a Neon on that previous meta. And I think C9 kind of prepared, getting ready to play how OpTic would play with the Neon. But then when you pull out a Raze, but on top of that the Fade, I think that's where it gets annoying to play against on defense, because that the C's from the Fade with the paint shells, or even the gravity wells with paint shells, those are the kind of things that are very annoying to play with. I mean, look at the agent composition in itself. Look at the amount of things they have to stop and slow. Every single one of these agents have something, from paint shells to fault lines to aftershocks to trademarks to stars to the fucking C's. Like, there's just so much that doesn't allow a C9 to really get a big hit into a site. There's always utility that's going to split the attack, and I think OpTic just prepared very, very well with this comp over here, which is why, like, I mean, this is the Ghost comp at the same time, too. They haven't played the same type of style as Ghost did versus the Guard, but it's still going to be a composition that's very, very, very strong and annoying to play with on defense.
I mean,
Sorry, you go.
I was going to say, I feel like the Neon play from Vic hasn't been so great that we were like, whoa, this is insane. It was mostly just kind of mediocre. So I like the fact that they went for a change, giving him someone that maybe has a little bit more damage in their tool belt. to kind of boost him up a different level, because I do feel like Neon's fun. Like, yes, you can change pace, you can break timings, but Victor's performance was suffering as a result, and that's someone you want at the forefront based on what he can do. So I like the switch to Raze. I feel like Neon was kind of not a gimmick, but gimmicky, like at first, and it's like, okay, that's done. Let's move on. Adaptation is what's going to separate the best teams from the slightly weaker teams. So the fact that OpTic is willing to make those changes so quickly is promising.
I mean, I just remember watching him playing defense on Haven as Neon. He just pushes A long, gets flashed, and tries to run away. It was like every round, it's like run out there, have to face a jet, you know, or more than one player, try and fuck off back into the A site before he gets sort of taken down. So, you know, the Raze obviously gives him a ton of options, and there's it's very hard to stay embedded in corners, I guess, especially with this kind of comp. All right, so I want to talk more high level about our last game here. Obviously, Ghost Gaming managed to bounce back from obviously that loss in week 1. The guard, oh man, I mean, geez, talk about a precipitous rise and then a fucking free fall from a team that was the #1 seed in North America. What on earth is going on?
Same thing. I think it's the same thing as Sentinels right now. Look at the agent comps that they're currently running here for the guard. Where's my Raze in there, right? Jonah P's playing a jet, which is totally fine, because now you're trying to evolve a little bit with the meta where you need, not necessarily need, but it's nice to have that chamber that's going to play a Sentinel / duelist, so that you free up a spot for another type of agent that's going to add more layers into your composition. First off, trying to have Jonah P dash into sight was not working at all with the amazing combination skills and play that Ghost is pulling out between a Proto, John Cutie, and Nismo. Like, there's been so many of these rounds, even like there's a round where they're trying to control Garage and they get met up by the Seas, the Gravity Well, and Paint Shells. And then I think Nismo gets a kill onto Valorant or something like that. I just think that the defensive side for Ghost was very oppressive. But again, it's the issue of what the guard has in terms of trying to follow up with the meta. Saya player is a great player. They tried to have him play a bit of Raze back in the T1 days as well, but it was like just okay. And I think right now it's still okay too if they're trying to switch Saya player into a Raze player on that roster. Who else could play a Raze right now? I don't think there's that many people, which is why Jonah P's trying to pick that up. But if he does that, they lose a lot of Sky utility, where he's really shining in that position. And that's Trent trying to take that role now too. So this whole like meta right now is making things very uncomfortable for the guard to figure things out on like who's comfortable on what agent. And you have to go back to the basics of learning those mechanics to even get that teamwork in. So yeah, it's rough right now for the guard. It's do or die going into the next weekend. I mean, they still like, this is their map pick and they got thrashed on, but they still did very good on the second map against Ghost. So
yeah. I mean, this was just such a weird series for me, because Ghost, who looked, I mean, obviously incredibly good on this particular map. Haven, to be fair, they were defending.
Yep.
We turn around, we go to Ascent, Ghost's map pick, and when we get to Ascent, Ghost look like they are completely rudderless on the attacking side. Just what is going on? Ghost obviously playing that Raze, the KO composition, so they've got the tools. Obviously, they have a fade as well. Why are they so inefficient here at actually sort of pressuring sites? Again, this isn't. Sorry, excuse me, I've got an earthquake. This is their map pick, for Christ's sake. Like, why do they look so angry? Why do they look so weird?
I mean, you know, in the series in general, what I liked from Ghost was their coordination. You look at map 1, a lot of the utility was used in tandem, so no one ever just threw out random utility. It seemed like they timed it and communicated well. I feel like that kind of fell apart on Ascent. If I'm not mistaken, this is a different comp for them. They swapped some players around to change up the composition, and I think that could be a contributing factor, a reason as to why Guard was able to do what they did. But I think one of the reasons why Guard in general is struggling is, like Vans, you mentioned the agent comps. I also just think they're still rattled. You know, these are young players. They just came off the back of this big performance in North America to go to their first international event. You've got one player with experience of that level in Saya player, but pretty much everyone else is new to this. So they go to an international event and they don't have a great time. They only play 2 series. They lose both of them and they watch the rest of the tournament. You know, not getting to play groups probably hurt that team a bit because they didn't get that level of playing experience they needed at a stage event. So they kind of just got thrust into playoffs. So then they come home and they're kind of bummed. They're young players. They don't take that kind of thing well. They lose their first group stage match when everyone's like, oh, there's so much pressure on Guard to be the team they were in stage 1. They have to prove they weren't just a fluke. That's hard as a young player. So then they come in and they lose that first game, and I think it's just spiraling now. It's starting to get out of control. I think that puts a lot of pressure on leadership, MCE specifically, to kind of like get these guys to calm down and like reevaluate how you're going to approach each match. Because, yeah, maybe they do need to change up the agent compositions. Maybe that's all it takes to just break that level of comfortability to find them something new that can like kind of spark what we saw from them in stage 1.
Yeah.
This reminds me of Rise Nation post LCQ. Honestly, just a crisis of confidence and maybe even identity. Correction as well. This was actually this map was the guards pick. So Ghost picked Haven. I'm scoreboard Stevening, obviously, chat. So it looks like that was back to front. It might have been back to front on the actual broadcast as well.
I felt
yeah,
like,
apparently
I felt like it was the guard that picked Haven. I'm gonna have to check Discord once again. It might be another one of those issues. But I'm pretty sure the guard picked Haven. But
They did.
Okay, actually no.
I have it in my notes here. They did.
I'm being challenged in chat, so you might be right. It might have been I can't trust VLR.
Map 1 Haven selected by the guard. Map 2 Ascent selected by Ghost.
Okay, so again, that doesn't diminish the sort of narrative that we're developing here.
Yeah,
I think
again, yeah, it still comes down to the roles. As well. It definitely still comes down to the roles, and even on the second map, like I was watch partying this for fun, and I was like, Trent's gonna play Silva on this map. They're totally fine. They're winning the second map. So that's what I'm talking about. Like Trent's gonna be able to play a role that he's a little bit more comfortable on the B side, knows how to play the retakes onto the A side, just because this is a role that he's super comfortable with. And Jonah P, it's like the Jet. He doesn't play it badly. I think he plays it super well, and I think it fits into the rest of the equation that they need to make things going in their favor. But it's also on how Ghost had a lot of these stupid rounds where they never check 50s and they're just getting fucking boomed. So I think there was a little bit of fundamentals that was missing from Ghost and minor mistakes that really was capitalized and taken advantage of by the guard when you're training to enter a site and you're not checking the right side of logs for 2 rounds and get boomed. That's an indication that you're a little bit you're in a flow state or a high that's too high on winning 13-1 against the guard and thinking you just thrash it and just run him down into the second map, and that's how they had to fix things on Fracture after.
Let's obviously we'll leave you with the final moments here from Fracture, which is Ghost come out on top. I mean, they're able to get 7 rounds in that first half and string together some good defensive efforts in the second. The compositions, as you can see, are the same. So obviously Ghost pretty happy with that win there. But again, it's another brick in the tough story for the guard going forward. For them, I think it's going to be a matter of just trying to bounce back in some way, shape, or form. What can they do? They can go 2-3. No, they can go 3-2, right? Still,
they can.
They have to win out from this point.
They have to beat TSM, XSET, and NRG.
Good luck.
That's hard. Like I think TSM's playing pretty well. I think Energy is really strong as well, and obviously XSET is the favorite right now in this group because we said it week 1. Like after the guard lost, it was like I don't know what the hell's going to happen here because the guard was the favorite. So then it's like XSET's the favorite. Who's going to take the other 3 spots? Flip a coin and find out. Like, it could be any of these teams. So there's still a chance Guard makes it. Still possible, but I'd say it's fairly unlikely. And I do think that a loss next week is going to be just, really bad for this team long run. I think it's going to affect their mental pretty heavily. I'm a little bit worried for this team because I was so enthusiastic about this roster. Like I loved watching them in stage 1. I like the way they approached the map. I love the structure of the team, the camaraderie, like seeing them fist bumping on cams and stuff after every time they went around. Like I love that. They're like this story you want to see them succeed, but they are just missing the mark left and right here in stage 2, and it's brutal.
I mean, talking about teams that are in dire straits, looking at our matches for next week, one of the doozies for me is the fact that Sentinels have to go up against fucking OpTic in a must-win game. They are 0-2 right now with -14 map differential, and they have to play against OpTic. I mean, they're fucked.
Yeah,
they're absolutely fucked.
You hear that? That's the sound of cheeks getting clapped. That is probably gonna be a blowout. I think that OpTic will pretty much dumpster Sentinels next week. I don't want to sound like I'm being hyperbolic. I don't think that Sentinels wins 10 rounds. Based on the play that we've seen from them so far, I'm just so disappointed by this roster. And unless they go into heavy counter preparation mode, like they're watching OpTic VODs and they're really preparing, finding agent comps that work as a counter to the way that OpTic plays the game, I think that OpTic's just going to best them playing the game they always play.
It's gonna be a fun one because I think this is a nice little rivalry as well between like the OpTic when it used to be Envy, when it used to be together were terrific versus Sentinels, and it was always like it took them like 9 or 10 games before they actually won the first map, or the first series. And now that they have a chance to be at the forefront at like the highest of highs, while Sentinels at the lowest of lows, if it's actually a blowout for OpTic against Sentinels, it's just a nice little a nice little conversation for OpTic with that victory if it happens.
I mean, this is if we get Icebox right. Obviously, it's in that we saw OpTic get thrashed on versus Cloud9. That'll be an interesting map. I think if there's any map that might give us something to sort of be interested in, it could be that one. Obviously, these teams play pretty differently, right? We have like the KO chamber look from OpTic, and Sentinel still like to go with 10s on the Jet. So definitely different approaches for these teams. Obviously, the Viper will be a common factor between them. So that game may not be good. This game might be, though. We're going to get to see TSM versus XSET. Currently 1 versus 2 in this sort of group. And this is for XSET to lock up their qualification here. And Split seems to be the kind of map that we ought to look forward to, even though I guess 100 Thieves picked that against TSM.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one as well. If it comes down to the XSET and TSM, there's been like a moment where XSET looked like they were going to lose, or it was slipping away from their map against Energy last weekend, but it took a timeout for them to like just readjust, get things going, and just run away with the series after. But TSM is also on one of those maps or one of those series where they look very good on this map. I think this is like a really, really great matchup to watch. XSET winning this one, I think their goal is not necessarily to finish number 1. They just want to make it out the groups. Getting number 1 would be great, though, because if you guys don't know, getting the first seed coming out of the groups also lets you skip the first round of the playoffs, right? So that's a very important finish that you want to have. But for XSET, I think they're comfortable with just making it through. So it's an important game just to make it through. If they don't make it through, they still have a great chance in the other weeks.
I think one of the issues that every team that plays XSET is going to have in this group is that XSET has the best map pool of every team in this group, because there's some inadequacies for a couple different teams, TSM being one of them. I think that XSET's map pool is always going to overlap well with whoever they face off against. It's once we make playoffs and we have to play, like Cloud9, or you have to play OpTic, that things get a little bit more interesting for XSET. But honestly, like, XSET are jogging through the groups right now. I'm not concerned that they're going to even potentially drop a series. They might drop a map, but I think that right now XSET has this on pretty much on lockdown.
Any other games that we're looking forward to this week? Let's bring up the matches. Mark, anything that we should be looking out for as maybe like a sleeper pick for a bit of a banger?
I like OGLU and Ghost Energy. I think that those games have potential to be very fun to watch. Obviously, we know what Energy is capable of. I think Ghost is showcasing a lot of solid teamwork. I think they need to expand their map pool a little bit. The depth seems to be missing. Like just watching the way they played Ascent against Guard, I think they swapped one too many roles. Like John Cutie plays really good as Fade on map 1, and then they switch him off of Fade on map 2. I think that was a bit of a mistake because Brock didn't necessarily feel as comfortable with the role, and you could see that in the results. And I think the LG-EG game is interesting because, Vans, I think you even said it earlier, like, those teams might match up pretty well with one another. A little bit scrappy at times from the both of them. I think that's what made the EG Sentinel series maybe less exciting. It was a little too scrappy. And I think that LG also kind of leans in that direction at times. Not to say they're not well drilled or rehearsed, but when you compare them to teams like Cloud9, XSET, OpTic, they're not necessarily on that level yet. I think that's what makes those games really fun to watch, is because it can go any direction, and the map pools should line up. So
B-Dog's going to have his hands full once again for the EG versus LG, right? Because it's B-Dog versus Jogimo and Boostio. That's been looking very good in this stage. Boostio calling as a chamber and still fragging out. Jogimo finding some good momentum playing as a Jet. They still have a very deep agent pool for a whole team. I think they've already, crossed that mark, check mark. We're not 0-5 in our group. Now that they're 1-1, they have a chance to run with that momentum and top down LG to not have like a flawless run into their groups for LG, which is why I think this matchup as a whole is actually very fun. That's probably my weekend match to look out for.
And it's important to remember, LG win, they're in. Like
Yep.
they get
Yeah.
that 3-0 spot, they're in playoffs. So this has a ton of weight for LG. They're going to approach this very seriously. There's going to be a lot of prep work coming into this one. So that's why I think it's going to be a great match. I really think this could be, like you said, Vance, one of the best matches of the weekend.
I mean, they'll be happy to be able to lock up that playoff spot so early in the season. We're going to see you on the desk at all. Mark, what's going on this week for you?
I will be on Friday, but Saturday and Sunday I will be a lowly spectator.
All right. Listen, it's not such a bad life. Trust me. You get to put your feet up, stuff on the other monitors.
Like MitchMan's doing right now. So he's just
Yeah,
chilling.
exactly.
Thanks for
Oh,
the
don't
raid, by the
worry.
way, MitchMan. 2 people. That's dope.
Oh, big.
Yeah.
I never know what to
Again,
do about that.
stalking
When
my Twitch.
someone like raids my stream or like one viewer, I'm like, thank you. I don't know. I don't
thank
know
him.
what that does in effect, but you went to the effort of doing that, so thanks.
Uber, I mean, come on.
auto-hosting.
In the
That's-
audio days of when like a good stream for casting audio only was 14 people, you'll take that one. So you have to treat it like it was an audio
I'll
broadcast
take
stream.
14 people now. What are you fucking
Fuck
talking
yeah.
That's
about,
true.
mate? That's
true.
fine by
You're
me.
You're still
Shit,
living in the
I do
past.
I work in fitness and health streams, mate. You better believe I love it. All right. Thank you very much for joining us, Mark, as well. Look forward to seeing, obviously, you on Friday. And, of course, VCT Week 3 with some teams in a position to lock their NA qualification spots up. We're going to go to a break. We're going to leave you with some of our very best guests of this era of Valoranting. When we come back, we're talking EMEA. We'll see you in a sec. If you've been enjoying Valoranting, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you get every episode hot off the presses. Let's talk VCT EMEA Week 2. Let's waste no time bringing our guest for this segment. It's the better half of MitchMan, Tombizz. Thanks for joining us once more on the show, buddy.
Oh, I like how it already starts. I don't even have to say anything, and Mitch is already getting wrecked.
I've said more in the last hour than I have. Jesus.
Hey, perhaps we can remedy that. You can let your gums flap a little bit here. Let's go over our Week 2 results in EMEA.
Time for me to mute.
Let Vans get a break. These dimples look like they're bloody looking like chasms right now. Just smiling. Wow. Okay. So obviously, look, a couple of maybe one-sided matchups and a couple of interesting results in there as well. I mean, talk us through high level here, Tom and Mitch. Maybe some of your favorite games this week, or maybe if there's any unexpected results here.
I guess I wouldn't say any of the actual results were unexpected. I think if
Yeah.
anything, it's gone exactly as planned. I think the surprise game was Guild versus Big, and I think the exact thing I tweeted was, "Can we delete the VOD because I don't want to see this again." It was some
That
of the
bad?
scrappiest Valorant I think I've ever seen, and especially when you compare it to how Guild played last week. I was like, oh, this Guild team, they look incredible. I still think they're easily going to make it through their group, don't get me wrong, but it was just like Big were playing in this sort of scrappy style, and I almost feel like Guild kind of went down to their level.
I enjoyed your tweet, Tom, because I believe that was the day I had some friends over, right? Because we're working Friday and Sunday, so those middle 2 games, we weren't working on. And yeah, next day I wake up before the broadcast, and right and early in the morning, I'm like, oh, I catch up on some of those games. I see Tom's tweet, I'm like, all right, good, just watch game 1. I guess we'll leave the second out. It's always good to see though that Big are able to take him out, but Tom, from what I gather, it's not a wholly positive takeaway in that series now.
No, I would say if anything, Guild didn't play to the level I think they can. And again, I'd like you've still got some superstars. Like I think Musashi finally playing a Sentinel. He played Chamber. He played a Duelist, and
Yeah.
he basically won them the map that they won. Twiston's still popping off whenever he can, basically, and having to win them ridiculous rounds. But I don't think I've ever seen a game where more sort of like thrifty rounds are won. And it just wasn't like, it was enjoyable to watch the highlights, but if you actually sort of watch how round to round it went, it was just a really, really weird
Let's
game.
watch the
So,
fucking highlights then.
no,
because
let's not.
I mean, yeah, you guys said this is scrappy, right? And I can see that. Yeah, I can see this is a little bit out of whack. I mean, what is this? Okay, so I'm more curious. What does this say about Guild then, in your eyes? A team that, I mean, you've got to feel like should be maybe playing a little bit cleaner at this point, right? They're 2-0, but I think they fall behind Liquid this week just on map differential. But this is the team that beat M3C in week 1, and here we are now on the other side of the coin.
I think they're one of the best like prep heavy teams like in the entire tournament. I think if you watch the way they dismantled Mech, they didn't allow them to have those sort of highlight frag reels that we've seen from them even this week. Like the same stuff we saw versus Navi. They stopped that with just really strong utility setups, and I think on specific maps, they look incredibly good. For example, Haven, I think they might be the best team in Haven in all of EMEA at the moment. The problem is when you get onto some of the more scrappy maps, so you look at how they played Fracture, it just didn't look anywhere near as pretty as it had before. And that's when I think they start playing almost down to the level of other teams. Because I think Big, there's no doubt that they have some really solid individual players. Structurally, they lost God B. And I think everybody knew from that point the structure of this squad was going to go downhill.
Okay.
The other thing I'll add is that so we had last week, right? Musashi coming in was supposed to be IGLing constantly. We've been hearing, yet Musashi's IGLing, and then we turn around, bang, Looker's IGLing, and that was something that I hinted at when I initially saw this squad that it didn't really make sense to me, but maybe Musashi had more of a desire for IGLing than Looker did. But I know that from having worked with the dude for like 6 months, he's got a heavy preference for secondary calling, maybe for primary calling if he was on a team that didn't have an IGL. I think there's a lot of potential in Big, but again, it's a team that is fighting to hold on, not to make it to playoffs even. I think that's way too ambitious for them. Right here, though, the guild game, like I would love to sit back and say that, oh, they took a map, that's fantastic. Like, look, my boy Looker's on there. I want to believe in Big 100%, but certainly from what Tom's saying and from the vibe of the community, it seems like guild maybe come in a little bit underprepared, don't manage to take the win.
Well,
I
Musashi
think
went 30-12 as well. Like
Yeah, he
I
dropped
feel
a
like
big
that was the reason they won. Like he got so many just unbelievable highlights, and I feel like a lot of it was maybe just Guild didn't go in as prepared versus Big as
Sure,
they should have done,
exactly.
especially after week 1.
And I think maybe they look at it as well as certainly as an onlooker. Big certainly doesn't seem like a team that you have to be worried about up until this week in terms of their
Yeah.
performance. I bet Guild probably thought they could come in, play a little bit looser, and easily find the success, but realize that, okay, there are actually some individuals that can step it up, and Big do have a couple of trap cards up their sleeve. But like I said, I don't think they're refined enough to really pose a threat to a top-level team for the next couple weeks, which unfortunately means until next season of VCT.
What? Okay. I mean, we can pop on this third map here. Obviously, this is Guild showing just how sort of strong they are in Haven. Also,
Yeah.
I don't know how many teams in Europe are doing this. We don't see this much in NA, right? Their teams are playing the Killjoy on this particular map still, right?
Decently popular.
Guild get some value out of it. At least they don't lose a defensive round here. But Big, you show us that, yeah, obviously without a player dropping 30, they definitely they struggle to measure up.
They keep swapping roles as well. I think this is the biggest problem. Like they've done the classic sign 4 people who normally play duelist and just try and switch them into other roles and see how it goes. And it doesn't go well. Like it almost never goes well. Or it takes a very long time to actually fit things. Like you've got Musashi moving from a chamber where his job is basically get AWP kills to now playing breach. Obnox is now playing chamber. And you just see them continuously like switching up these different roles, and it's just weird. I don't think they actually have the sort of almost default of what they're doing just yet. So we're just having these constant switches for who can actually play a certain agent. So almost playing the agents they want and then just fitting the players in where it works. And I don't think that's going to work long term. I think it's something that they have to have a little bit more of a set plan. I also think if Musashi's just popping off on an agent and you're going to play that agent, it's a bit weird to just go, okay, now we'll see if Obnox can do the same thing, because the answer was no.
Yeah, and I guess it comes back to we don't know how things looked in Prac and all those sort of ideas,
True.
but I do think for Big, these are the sort of growing pains that you see for newer teams where you don't have that structure at the top level to really look through some of these setups and grab the most potential out of some of the decisions that are being made. But then you look even further and you start to think, okay, well, yeah, if an agent's being put, or if a player, if they're shoehorning agent comps, basically saying, oh, we want to play these agents on this map, that is how you should play this map with these 5 agents. Now, who's going to play this one? That's the sort of backwards engineering that you don't really want to see when it comes to, especially a group of players who aren't like tier 1, like all 5 tier 1 players who are super, super flexible and have that. Like, there's very few teams, if any, that can sort of flex up and flip around the roles willy-nilly. I think really with time you'll start to see those things refined. You'll start to see the team hopefully play to the strengths of individual players. But it also takes a while to try these things out and realize that actually that wasn't a strength for your player, right? They no doubt came in here and thought, oh, these changes that we make, they're gonna give us a win here. They're going to be, hugely valuable. But then you sit back and go, actually, Musashi's, just to keep it super basic, right? Musashi taking a chamber, maybe that would have brought more value on this map when you start to look at how the previous went and the signs of victory. But the sort of thing that a team can only learn over time, right? And that's why I said they need more of it.
How do you guys feel about talking about this OG versus Fnatic game?
Don't feel like
we can really gloss over
I think
this.
Mitch
'cause
wants to take this one specifically, being that he
Yeah.
has stated they're going to make it top 3 in the group at the beginning of the season. So, as they are now 0-2 and just got banged, I'm really curious to how he
And,
sees with that continuing.
I mean, these guys got turned into sock puppets.
Yes. So let me just refute that claim first from Tom. We made a video in which I very jokingly said the predictions of the teams, but I then followed up and said if I was to be unbiased, I would say this, and it was a little bit more grounded in reality. That said, I did not think this series would be this dominant. I mean, look, Fnatic have got 2 very strong players in Durka and Alfair. That alone puts them above the majority of teams that are in VCT right now. What they're able to deliver. Look at this. Durka TPs and then reveals his teammate and then gets Hunter's Furied on because the recon hit him. It landed on his fucking ankle.
Oh
and,
my
And then he
God.
TP'd it. It didn't have that big of an impact, but it was just a funny little detail. Can you imagine his teammate gets killed? Mystic goes down. No rolling thunder for final round. You'd be sat there like, you fucking serious? Like,
Recon on the ankle? That's the equivalent of Valorant house arrest, my guy.
Hey, you can't go anywhere, bro. Just well, I guess you gotta go to your
trust me,
teammate and
he
get them to
can.
shoot it. Oh, that's the problem.
He can. He went
Durka.
anywhere he wanted to.
If you TP with the recon in you, does it drop?
No,
Oh,
it stays
follows
on you.
Oh
Yeah.
wow,
It sticks
That's
on
why
you.
they
It
got
becomes
pinged,
part of the
'cause
player
guy was
model.
in the spawn.
that's
Yeah.
funny.
Literally becomes
Unlucky.
part of the player model. But yeah, I think like this is a team again. We mentioned Looker in the previous. My boy's hype on OG, and then you got Firoth or Enzo as he's going by now over on Fnatic. This was a series that I was going to be happy no matter who won, but sad no matter who lost. You know, and it was a little bit
No
more
one was
dominant
happy
than I
about
was
this.
kind of hoping for.
I mean, what in the ever living fuck is this?
Look,
Yeah.
I can't wait for you to bring up the scoreboard because it's just hilarious. The top 5 players are all from Fnatic, like in ACS,
Yeah.
every single one. It's not something you see very often, but yeah, it literally went just their team and then the other team. It was
Oh,
brutal to watch all the way through. Dirk obviously ended up being player of the week, but I don't think anybody's surprised by that.
Mm.
And yeah, I don't. The worry for me as well is I don't think they actually had to go deep into their strat book either. Like it was just that they were individually better. They could walk into the sites and basically just open up around. Even if you look at some of the first kill stats, they're not actually that bad for OG London United. It was just that they would then just get slaughtered from that point onwards. And I don't know. I considering they've only changed one player, and last season they looked fantastic structurally. Now they look worse, and I don't know if it's just that they got to the point where they're like, okay, we did all right. We managed to sort of stay in the league, which I think for their squad is pretty decent.
sure.
I don't think they've got better, and I think other teams have.
Yeah, that's always going to be the problem, as we said. The lower echelon kind of catching up, and if you stall out at all, you try to make some big changes with the team, with how it's run. I don't know on what level, whether we're talking tactics, whether you're talking about the way that the players are being handled, but whatever it is, when you make these changes and you stall out and it doesn't find immediate success, alarm bells are going to start to ring because these groups are cutthroat right now. In those first 2 or 3 games, they set you up to have a very stressful last couple of weeks as they come towards closing it out.
Can I get a wellness check on Liquid while we're here? Because I think this is a team that people are kind of wondering like how much rope these guys have, right? I think obviously their situation in Iceland was odd for them, considering where their team was at and how they sort of made it in there. Obviously Fracture's BBL's pick, and I think Liquid are able to get a few rounds here on defense. Here they get 5 in a row to start with, and they sort of kind of get shut down. This ends up being a really, really close map. And again, it's Kushner who has a really good game. Also, Soulcast makes a bit of a cameo there as well on the Astra, having almost dropping 30, right?
I think although Kushner was definitely the best in terms of just sheer entry, I think Soulcast was MVP of the map. Like he basically was just lurking. It was kind of just on the other side of the map. Got double entries sometimes, like won them multiple like 3 versus 5s that they never should have even been in the round, and then was also just setting up utility for the rest of the players on the other side of the map. Like his Astra genuinely looks fantastic, which, considering how many agent swaps he's had at this point, even I think he went into the interview and basically said, like, yeah, the first times I played it, I didn't really understand what was going on, but I feel like I picked it up quite fast. And we were just kind of sat there like, well, yeah, you were literally the best player today. So the fact that that's happened is impressive. I do also think that BBO are one of those teams that are vastly improved. I think a lot of that comes off the back of just Kushner being unbelievable.
Yeah, it's one of the concerns. You see an individual pop off like that, but I guess it can come back potentially to a team like Acend back in the old days when we're like CNET and friends, but do they have, can you rely on that? And the answer at the start was fucking yeah, you can. Dude is always popping off. But then we got to the point where it's like, oh, this isn't CNET and friends. This isn't one dude popping off and the other's following up. For BBL, we're starting to see that. We're starting to see players like Aslan really come into their own. And to be honest with you, Tom, my thing is that Pora and Turco have been a lot. So I remember most of the time I would cast them, they would come out of a game. I would remember them. I don't think I said Pora's name at all in this game. I
think
don't think
Turco
I said
had
Pora's
3
name in
clutch
the
rounds,
last
right?
5 BBL games. It's been like between himself, Pora especially. I think him not playing that Sentinel lurk has been something that over time I've really begun to hate. I think he gets so much value in that role and doesn't get that much elsewhere, at least compared to other players.
Do you want them to then run a double Sentinel or get rid of the chamber? Because that's the problem. Like, you now have Aslan, who was before like a quasi controller, like Reyna. Like he was his sort of agent pool used to be really weird, and now he's got chamber that he can sort of flex onto as well, and that was also really really good within this series. So it is sort of, it looks like almost the loss that they've had to take for some of the other players to shine, because I don't think that you can then have him on this lurk and then remove the chamber. I don't personally think that's worth it, especially because when you look at how he uses the headhunter, there's a fair few rounds that they've won off that alone.
Yeah, I'll say for me, Chamber doesn't count anymore. Not with one trap. He's a duelist.
True.
I don't know if we'll see that directly reflected in all teams, but I think that teams that don't do it are they're taking a risk. They're playing it their way. I'd say they're playing it wrong. I think that this guy right now, he has one trap for himself. He can play around that, have a little bit of control. But if you're talking about especially a map like Fractured, you want to play with a Sentinel. No, he's not a Sentinel. Not in my mind, at least.
My question for you guys, actually looking at Liquid, is it like, because I think when we were looking at their downfall and when they almost were gone, and then suddenly they have a resurgence during Iceland of their run. Do you feel that losing Sliggy is also still an identity crisis in terms of missing an IGL to be able to have like those mid-round calls, those late-round calls, and readapt and adjust into like the later part of the game?
I don't think it's an identity crisis. I think they've set their identity. They're just going against the grain on it, right? Like, this is a team that thinks about the game very differently to Sliggy, so much so that they've parted ways. And I'll say, from my perspective, I think my view of the game aligns with Sliggy a lot more, probably because most of us will have learned the game from watching the likes of Sliggy stream. So, you know, well, listen, maybe not all the way. Maybe we don't fully line up there. But in terms of structuring a team,
or was that Fnatic? I can't remember.
No, I don't think they tried triple. But yeah, no, I think that, like, as far as structuring a team and looking at it from that perspective, I think we definitely share views. I think most of us would. It's a more conventional approach to the game. And for Liquid, they're coming in and saying, no, fuck that. We can do it differently. We can, completely redefine it. And I don't think it's an identity crisis. I don't think it's even necessarily wrong. I don't think it's right either. It's just like, it comes back to what I said earlier. You have to build a team with the tools that you have. You can sit there and go, oh, I love a house made out of brick, but motherfucker, if you've only got clay, you can make bricks out of that, I think. So that doesn't really work. But you know what I mean?
So that works.
Another fantastic
You got sand. You got to make it out of glass. I don't know. I got lost on that one. Point is, they got the tools here to maybe make a team that can compete at top level without being traditional structure, and that's something that I'm excited to see. But I don't know that you'd be able to do it with 99% of teams. This is probably one of the few iterations of a lineup that has a chance.
Well, though, because you have to bear in mind they haven't played anyone that I would expect Liquid to lose to on any,
for sure,
like in any form. That's the problem. It's like, I think BBO have improved a lot, but they're still in my bottom 3 for that group. I think everybody has the same top 3, and they haven't played any of those teams. They played big in their first ever game without God B. They were never going to win whoever they played, and now they've beaten BBL just. And that's what worries me, because
But they
we
could
haven't
fucking
actually
qualify
seen...
with one more win, boys. They coasted on their
Yes.
fundamentals, and they could still get there.
But the thing is, like, Navi are a tough team for everyone, so that one's definitely going to be interesting. But that's the thing for Liquid. You're talking about getting out of groups. I don't even see that as an achievement for Liquid. Like, I don't
Sure.
like, they should make out of groups every single time, no matter the group. Okay, maybe if they were in the other one, it would have got a little bit closer.
Sure.
What I mean is, they've not played anyone I would say is a tier 1 team yet. I'd say BBL are getting close, but I think that realistically, until we get to that playoff stage and they play a Fnatic, an FPX, an Acend, even when they play Guild or Met in the groups, like, that's when they're challenged, even just on an individual level. Because right now, they have 5 of the best players in the entire region, and they can just batter anyone playing whatever they like. And even then, versus BBL, they didn't batter them. It was really, really close and came down to a few clutch plays. So I'm waiting to see when they play against, for example, Guild, who are incredibly structured,
Yeah.
will have done their homework and their research, and then they go, okay, we're going to take a pause and go over to shit. There's no one there anymore. Or maybe there is, but we don't know who it is. And that's where things, I think, are going to be a lot tougher for them, because I feel like Sliggy was the creator, the ideas man. And that was what, at least in the interview, that's why he said he left. He was like, I wanted someone else to come in and help with the IGLing, because I was basically just creating everything for them and they were running with it. Well,
Yeah.
that can't fly anymore. So will they be able to adapt, or are they just going to lose to what I would say are probably better teams?
Yeah, I mean, they might be 2-0, but they're 20 rounds clear as well at the top of the table, but they have all the hard teams to play next. So there's a world where this team legitimately doesn't qualify.
Yeah.
They have to. Yeah, what's Guild, Mech, and Navi, right? So the Navi one, I guess, is probably the most
They
intriguing
should be
one.
Navi, but it doesn't mean they will. Like, as said, no one so far has had an easy road versus Navi, and I think that they are a squad that has a lot of strong individual ability. It's just the fact that right now they're in a bit of a weird spot. They lost one of their best players. They brought in Zeddy, who I think has played pretty well, but it wasn't enough to beat Met.
All right, so you guys sort of felt like most of these games played out the way that you expected them to. Let's talk about FPX, because they bounced back after a bit of a tough first week. It goes to 3 maps against Fnatic, and they go up against a G2 team that is, continuing to elude our attempts to sort of analyze them adequately. We start on Fracture here, which I felt like is a good G2 map, just because the chamber, so MitchMan chamber and the Nook here, obviously dichotomy is really good. Did G2 play Raze here in the past? Are they pivoting off that now, or have they always had this kind of comp?
I'm pretty sure at one point, like, Nuke was playing Viper on this map. Like, they've tested a lot of weird comps on Fracture. The same as, actually, I feel like what we have to do to sort of premise FPX winning on Fracture is bring up last week's Fracture comp and then bring up this week's Fracture comp, and then I think you'll understand why it was different. Because yeah, well, I'll let Van Silly break this one down if you can actually bring that up, because I don't think it's going to be too complicated to realize.
Go on, Vance. You're a producer.
All right, what we
mate.
got? Let me have a look at this. What are we looking at?
All right, you want to hear? Oh, okay, there we go.
That's last week's comp here.
All right.
No,
so
no,
we're
for FPX.
So we have a good KO. Is that what we're looking at?
No.
We want to
FPX's
look at
comp
FPX's
is
comp last week.
for this week and last week on Fracture.
I mean, they had some fade.
don't-
I knew they had some fade, right?
Right.
I
This
feel
week,
like
obviously,
this week
they're playing Shao on Fade on Fracture.
And then
so
I think they
I
had
think you're
artists
missing
on
something a
on
little
a
bit-
jet as well on
A little bit more.
There we
A little
go.
bit more glaring.
There we go. That's last
A little
week.
bit more
Yeah,
glaring.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you
oh.
remember
I'm telling
this
you,
comp?
this is not a bad thing. I mean, this is actually okay. Look, if I haven't really caught up to the first map yet, but I was watching the second map because everybody in the community was telling me, "Oh, you have to watch FPX Ascent on attack on this series." So I was watching that one, but this is an FPX versus Fnatic, so I think that's still wrong. But nonetheless,
That was last
No,
week's
that's-
comp.
that's
This
last
week's
week,
comp
yeah.
was fine, but what I'm saying is last week they got banged. This week they didn't, and they made
Oh.
some changes, which was basically, I think they stopped artists playing on Breach, which, like, I
yeah,
don't
and then
know
they
why
had
you have your
artists
best
on
player
Jet,
playing on
and then they
Breach.
had a fade.
You've got
I
rid
think
of a
it's still pretty good.
Yoru.
Yeah.
Like,
So they're not
a lot of their
fucking
stuff
trolling
this week
anymore.
made more sense.
But Yoru's
Yes,
not a bad
basically.
pick though.
Fracture.
Yeah,
For
I don't think
you
Yoru's a
want
bad
Angel
pick on
playing
Fletcher.
Yoru. Sorry, you want Angel playing Yoru, is what you're saying to me.
I would not be against Angel playing Yoru. I mean, Angel's
Okay.
able to frag out on a jet, so why can he not play a duelist on Yoru? Right?
Well, evidence is showing otherwise.
Technically,
In your
on
mind,
paper,
it
it
seems
should
to
look pretty
work.
good. Just based on what I've seen from Yoru on Ascent from OpTic, I think now on Fracture it could look pretty good. Theoretically.
Well, it didn't.
Yeah. Theoretically.
In the game it happened, it didn't. So
Yeah,
theoretically, it got destroyed by Alfire in his first game. All I'm saying is they switched things up to what I would say is a little bit more standardized, something that I think for them just looked a lot better. You had him back to a controller, you allowed artists to pop off, which, as said, like I don't really want to see artists playing anything other than a chamber or a jet because he's just unreal on both of those agents. Like, I understand the Angel is always going to have these crazy, like, in-depth compositions that could cheese a team. The thing is, I don't feel like FPX ever need to. Like, maybe versus Fnatic, they felt like they had to try something a little bit different. Okay, cool, it didn't work. But they go back to what I would say is much more comfortable picks. Xiao has proven that I think he can play any agent in the game. He's now bringing in Fade. It looks decent. He's still fragging. You got Zipan on another agent he's very comfortable on. And this just looked like a composition for them that made a lot more sense. And they would, on the day, they were just better than G2.
We've come a long way from watching FPX on Ascent with no duelists and just laughing our asses off into now FPX playing no duelists on Fracture and be like, yeah, this works. This is pretty good.
They are playing a duelist. We need to stop this whole like this Chamber isn't a duelist because now that he's only got one trap. He is just a duelist. Like all of his kit is basically I can get aggressive and take a fight. Then I can teleport away and then reposition and take a fight. Oh look, I got some kills. Now I have an AWP. Like it's not a Sentinel anymore. Like it's got better kit than any duelist. So like I don't understand how anybody can really be like, oh yeah, they're playing no duelist. It is a duelist.
Yeah, fair play. Let's move on to Ascent then. I think we get Xiao continuing to play the Fade. So this is another team that wants to try and integrate this to as great a degree as possible. We get the Omen Fade combo. We don't have the Yoru there as well. That's strictly an NA look for the time being here. But FPX on the attacking side look really good. Able to string a bunch of these nice rounds together. They get like that 8-4 sort of scoreline by half, and you can see a lot of pressure comes from this Fade.
Agreed.
Oh, it's another really successful first half that then we swap sides and it ends up being a very close game. I don't know what's been going on recently. I don't know if you guys have felt this. I know I say this when we had a 13-0 this week, but I think that was a unique scenario. I don't feel like we get blowouts nearly as much as we used to. I think like as time's gone on, these games like consistently get closer and longer. You know what I mean? Anyone else feel that?
I feel like you're
recently?
forgetting the Mech Navi series in
Again,
this sort of
some
it was close because it was 3 maps,
scenarios
but no
there.
one got more than 5 rounds in the maps that were
true.
well, the team that lost.
This
See ya,
week had
Tom.
a lot of
Fuck you.
bomb games, but yeah, get out of here, Tom. Yeah, I think though, like just in general, I'd maybe. You know what it is, Tom? Maybe it's just because we got all those 2-0s for such a long time. We got all those fucking 30-minute maps, 25-minute maps. We were in and out. Maybe we're just starting to get the other end of it now.
Oh yeah, as you
The
say
universe
that.
is balancing.
Wait, 30-minute maps? Weren't you getting like quadruple overtime for splits in a row?
That's-
Or something?
Yeah.
That's what I mean, dude. Like, if I think of the last like 2 months of casting Valorant, 90% of the games have just gone the fucking distance. And then if I think of like the last year, I'm like, no, most of them were blowouts. But that could also just mean that, you know, teams don't fucking suck as much anymore. And we're actually getting to the point where, you know, the skill level on the majority of players is high enough to get these lengthy series. The depth is there that we can actually have these teams constantly adapt for more than, you know, 2 or 3 iterations. You know, they don't go, oh, we tried the A push and we tried the B push, and neither of those worked. So try an A
So
push
what?
again. Like now we're actually getting to the level where teams are playing that 4D chess and stuff. And maybe that could be another reason. But either way, this was a 2-0, but it was a fun one. It was a close one the whole way. Good
Yeah, I
questions.
think we also have to give like an honorable mention out to Hoodie, who I feel like for a while now has been like consistently G2's best team, like since or best player since like
Mhm.
Masters.
He had a weak Iceland
he's-
stint, didn't he?
No,
Would he?
I think he was their
Oh.
top fragger in every game. Like he was probably their
nice.
best player, and then he's come into this and still looked incredibly good. I think you've had weirdly Nuke sort of switch back over to Duelist and is actually putting up worse numbers, which again, I like you've got very high competitive opposition, but he was always I think if you go back to the last stage of challenges, he was the #1 player of the whole thing, like statistically playing agents like Sova and stuff. So the fact that he switched over to a duelist and seemingly gone down is a little bit weird because he is someone that, again, I think has been the most consistent player since the beginning of the game almost. Like he's been so good fragging wise that to see him go a little bit quiet in some of these matches is a little bit weird. And then on the other side of things, I feel like Avova hasn't been that same sort of crazy clutch guy. But again, I feel like part of that is just that FPX have set up such a like good structure within their team that it's much more difficult to see these sort of crazy rounds and, well, more so win them.
These are the final moments here on Ascent. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, this puts G2 now at 1-1. So, look, they're still in an okay spot. I think who they... We'll talk about who they're playing next week. They actually have OG London United next week. So, well, look, we hope to see a bit of a bounce back from this team. Yeah, they're going to be just fine. I remember, like, first time we saw this team, I asked Mitch about them. I recognized some of the players on the roster, but really, from different games. And let's talk about this Fokus team. They played against Acend this week. I don't know what expectations were for this roster. We sort of, I asked you at the start of the episode a bit about it, Mitch. But this team looks like they've got what it takes. They really are. They already took it to Acend in this map. Obviously, it's been saying clips from this first map, this bind map. But what's your kind of take on this team right now?
I mean, you want to take that, Tom? I talked about them at the start of the show.
Fair enough. I would say that in terms of teams that have come into the league, they're by far the best. Like I've enjoyed watching them week in, week out. I think they're not a team. Like I feel like when a lot of teams come up, they've got like one or two incredible players that have dragged them through like the VRLs, and they've managed to make it into the league. And then you see them play against Acend, and they get banged, and you're kind of like, yeah, they're not going to do that versus CNED. And then you see them come into this buying game and just, okay, I want to exclude this moment because they did almost lose a 1v5 to CNED. But they were so good structurally. And I think that's what I enjoyed. It was like they had cool little set plays. They had trap plays that Acend were falling into. There's like a clip where Yugi gets a triple kill because they flash one side. They go to kill the guy who flash, and he's just waiting for them. Like, they're a smart team, but also there isn't a weak link. Like, we've seen star performances from basically every single player. And I won't lie, I came into this and went, I know Yugi. He must be the reason they got through. I think it's far from it. Like, I've watched players like Butcher, I think was fantastic. You go back to week 1, Vong was by far their best player. Your boy Lewis has had some crazy sort of like clutch moments as well. And just his raise is the most enjoyable raise I think I've seen in a while. Like, it's basically, you know, those YouTube channels which are just like gray FPS or something like that, where it's like they're just they're blast packing over people's heads and then shooting them in the face before they can even realize. Like, it's a fun team, but also, again, structurally they're just fantastic. It's just a shame that they haven't quite been able to get it over the line in all of the matches. And the way this game closed out, at least on the final map, it was basically just them getting boomed by CNED and Starzo, which can happen to anyone.
I think we will. I want to have a look at that clip a little later on as well, because I feel like that was. I think someone tweeted it, said it could have been one of the very best 1v5s that we've sort of ever seen. Except for
I think it would have been the best play ever. It was a 1v5 with a pistol, and I think the only reason he lost was because he tried to res someone behind him, and the game res someone in front of him, which is just unreasonable.
Yeah, he turned to res the. Yeah, he turned to res someone.
It's a bait res. It's a bait res.
We can look at it here anyway, because I think. This is almost happy on Inferno level. This clip.
Yes.
There it is. There. So actually, as that wall was up, your boy Lewis got his ult. So I think he went forward, took an ult orb to get that showstopper in a 5v1, and I bet he was pretty fucking happy he did that afterwards.
He also wasn't the one that died. Like, he was the one that made the risky play, and his teammates all died.
Yeah.
But yeah, this res, it's
like
he
turns
20 HP
to res a player here.
Yes.
Walls in the
But
way.
He's
he's-
like, no,
the
fake
players-
res, fake
The
res.
player's dog tag is under the wall. I think that's the problem,
Yeah.
or something like that. And then he reses Starzo on the edge of the wall.
Yeah, no, he fucked up.
And it blocks him from
The
getting a
game
kill.
fucked up.
Oh, and he
Keep in
can't
mind,
swing.
Your boy Lewis is 20 HP. That's 3 bullets from CNED that were on him. But it's a
Yeah.
Spectre. It's got low pen, and that's an ice wall. Bullets won't go through.
It's not
Now
it.
he comes out to try take
Get
him.
out the
Pre-fires.
way!
Can't take him down. Okay,
Look
well,
at
now
this
my
one.
teammate's dead. I can go for it. Blast pack right down behind him so that his player has a little bit of extra movement.
It's
That
gone
throws
round
his
him.
crosshair off, and he's literally painted a full
Yo,
picture of the
bullet,
player around him.
bullet
That's
1 to
ridiculous.
12 clearly missed.
I'm pretty sure bullet 1 to 2
Jesus.
got 4 kills, so I don't know about that one.
Wow, that's fucking brutal. Oh well, at least Ascent, they get some catharsis from this entire series. So
Yeah.
about Ascend, Ascent. Fuck me, this is gonna be a pain in the ass. Seeing it up to his old tricks here. Again, looks like Fokus really playing like that. They're playing Killjoy here as well. So they start on the attacking side. They have the Killjoy. So I think that they're trying to sort of make this composition work, and they kind of bounce off Ascend pretty heavily in the first half on Ascent.
I feel like most teams at the moment are currently running the Killjoy there, just for those solo site holds, because I think that's one of the problems that we're seeing from teams that run the chamber alongside like another duelist or something like that, is that you just don't have the ability to just lock down B easily. And I feel like when you have a Killjoy, you can just do that. You can stand outside the site, you can have the turret as contact, and you can just activate all the nanoswarms to slow them down. And it just makes those sort of rotations so much easier and those risks a lot more minimal. But again, yeah, it was a close map. I think that you did again start to see just the form that CNED can have when he's on his primary agent, just smashing it when it came to the opening duels. But I feel like it was a day of just him and Starzo just having a fantastic performance. And the only time Starzo was really missing was in that first map.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. Look, for Focus, as we said, qualifying not really on the cards coming into the season. At least that's what we would have thought, that this team would have no chance. They would
In this group
maybe
as well.
But see, this is the thing. Them as a team coming in, you're like, oh, maybe they get lucky and they don't get put to relegation. That's probably like the best case scenario for them. They've already come through. OG London United, they're all right. They're going out. It's just looking pretty clear.
Yeah.
They've got big games
Get 'em
coming up.
out.
Like unlucky, you're pretty screwed on that. At least going to relegation, see if they can fight on there. And I guess they'll look at the next couple of weeks as a way to learn what they need to survive in this league. But yeah, then I'm looking at the rest, right? Let's pull it up. You got Fokus there, G2, FPX, Acend, and Fnatic. That is not a group that anyone as Team 5 in there is going to go, we'll definitely qualify. Yeah, it's like you're hoping to fucking God you don't get knocked out into relegation. That is a stacked group. And then knowing that Fokus is now actually a contending team, again, that game versus G2, it was a 2-0, 14-12, 13-11. Super close game versus Ascend. We just saw Bind, they fucking won. They beat Ascend. Ascend, who picked Bind. It's their best map by a lightning mile. They are the Bind team. They're unreal. And Focus fucking beat them 13-7. They embarrassed them on that map. And then, sure, the other two weren't exactly close. They didn't get to double digits, but they were damn close. There was a chance. This is a team that's, look, they're hanging around. But let's just take a look at the teams they have to play. You've got FPX, Fnatic, and then OG London United. If they can win one of these next two, they might make playoffs. They could do it.
The thing that worries me a bit for them is I can see a world where, because like OG London United last season were, I think, a 2-3 team. Like they look decent. I could easily see a world where somehow OG London United get it together for the final week, and then Focus
3
don't win a
weeks.
game, and anybody looking back at this will be like, they're another team that just got promoted, did nothing, and went out. And it's been nothing of the sort. Like, they could be 2-0 right now. In a very, like, not even in like a crazy world. Like, I think, okay, the Ascend one was a bit further away, but like versus G2, it was hella close. Like, came down to a few rounds, few people a little bit slow to start, and that was enough for G2. It's going to be sad if that does happen, but like, do I believe they'll be Fnatic or FPX? Absolutely not. Even though they've been very good so far, Fnatic have been the best team so far. Like, they've basically obliterated everyone. They've had one bad map in the entire tournament. And then on the other side, FPX, I feel like they had that slip up in the first week versus Fnatic. And since then, again, I just don't see them losing.
Yeah, it's a shame that, you know, in EMEA, only your top 3 teams go through to playoffs as opposed to 4 from NA. You have like that sort of GSL style where like one team gets like a bye in the first round kind of thing. Otherwise, like team like Fokus is, you know, has at least a shot to make it through, especially with like G2 looking a bit, you know, questionable right now. That's sad. That's not going to be the case. I mean, Starzo had a fantastic third map in that series. Against Fokus. We'll try and move this along if we can. We had seen it on the fucking Reyna again. So this team is still getting away with Reyna on the Icebox, which is not that new. It's like people were doing this 12 months ago and it was considered cheesy then, but CNED's getting a ton of value, just sort of bullying his way into these sites and winning out. And a lot of these fights, you can see a good example of that just there.
Yeah.
It
looks a bit rough on
yeah,
attack, though. It does look rough on attack. Like, I wouldn't say that this composition is amazing. Again, you've gone for one that doesn't have a Sage in it, so you have to be, like, almost wide swinging out on B and taking those fights. And I feel like actually in the first half, Focus looked better. Like, they adapted quite well. They went for almost a plant denial strategy, like, after 4 or 5 rounds, and it really started working. Then it went onto the defense, and they just got shit on. Like, because there's nothing you can do when you basically got either CNED with an operator on one side or then a free operator on the other side. And you can just see like Starzo is 7-1 in opening duels. Like he just started slamming them from that point onwards.
And I think the important thing as well, and every time that they lost Butcher or Buka,
Bucher. I think isn't that librarian?
Well, I think it's his second name. But obviously then I'm sure it comes from something, yeah, like that. But he was really important to keep alive. If he goes down, you are so fucked to get into a site without a Sage in this. And as soon as Starzo was able to get some of those early aggressive positions, or you had on attack side like Buha going down, I think he was involved in a couple of opening duels that he didn't really want to be. Books. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. He hasn't got the U on it. There's no dots.
I mean, you
on
probably
the U.
can't use umlaut. You can't. Yeah.
Well,
also either way, it still translates to books.
Yeah. Books.
All right. Okay. But yeah. So I think I think that this comp was really really hard to play with, and fair play to them for trying it, but I don't think it had the success that they wanted out of it. Attack side just way too tough to get in, especially against a team like Acend. I mean, if you're gonna go up against a team that turtles and hope that you can find some space, fair, but a team like Acend, especially like CNED locking in the Reyna, these fuckers are coming looking for you. They're gonna come take those fights. And this isn't a comp that necessarily deals
look
well.
at where Zeke is right now. Like, just look at where he is.
Who's the first one to die in this round, right? Buha goes down. You've got no wall. Now what the fuck do you do? And
I mean, that can't happen.
Sen keep pushing. They keep fucking going.
I mean, they're getting away with way too much here. At 12-9, wow. And Focus just push into all this as well. That's fucking tragic. Operator play out of tube, just get like 2 people.
Yeah,
man.
It got to the point of almost just bullying, where it was just like Acend decided, oh, we can, like, that was the second time that Zeke had made that play and they just hadn't seen it. So he was just so deep in A that he basically just went, yeah, they're either mid or B, and they can't be A because they haven't taken any map control. So I think it got to the point where they were scared of where they were being pushed from, and so they had to almost try and consolidate and just look for trades. And so then they lost even more map control because Acend didn't stop.
Were there any maps worth watching in this Mech versus Navi game? Because they're all fucking one-sided.
There were some crazy rounds, like as always, of like a 1v2 like shock dart clutch coming out from Shados, which made absolute. It was also one of the most clusterfuck rounds I've ever watched in my life. But yeah, it was like, if you've watched like CIS Counter-Strike, it felt like that, where it's just like a load of guys with unbelievable aim, taking aim battles and getting quad kills. And you can't really explain exactly what's going on, but that's about the gist of it.
Okay. So yeah, looks like okay, so let me distill my feeling about this as much as possible. What is up with the buy and play from Mech, for example? Like, if I'm picking the most surprising map in this series to try and sort of focus on here. 4 rounds? I mean, is this the same team that they were? Like, we talked about like the external factors, right?
They can't attack. It's the same problem they've had forever. They are in my eyes, they are the best defensive team in the world. I don't think anybody can beat them on defense. And if you look at the 2 maps where they started defense, it wasn't even fucking close. And then you look at the map where they started attack, they try and run the clock down. They really like almost try for these bait plays. I think one of the only rounds they actually won in this matchup was Nats basically just sneaking his way past his own screen and headshotting someone with a pistol. Like it was just one of those games where then you just start to see the adaptations. You see SSK being able to take ground. Also, if you want a game where you watch some of the weirdest orbital strikes you've ever seen, just watch any game where Chronicle is playing Brimstone. Like he basically at one point he decided to orbital strike long B on a chamber. Now there's so many problems with that, but one is firstly there's already a teleporter built into the game. So for starters, even if that person wasn't a chamber, they can just walk into the teleporter and he's used an orbital strike for that. But also it was a chamber, so he just teleported back to the site and they were like, okay, cool, you've managed to take nothing and we're still just sat here with our other players. It was peculiar, especially when we know how strong that Brimstone ult can be. I just don't feel like it was ever used in a smart way.
Ever. And that's the thing. It's not just this map. It was like I literally found myself looking at once he
used
didn't-
it tube, didn't he? On Icebox.
Yes.
Just
he
to
did,
force
Tom.
someone off the tube.
Yep. There was a guy on top of tube, so he orbital striked it. You know, as you do. I don't think most players would waste a molly on that. Never mind.
His teammate got killed for it as well. The player jumped off the tube and headshotted Nats.
Oh my god.
You maybe have Rays, maybe, that would throw a nade there because it can be refreshed in 2 kills, and maybe you got one, the player will be pushed in the open and you can at least take them down. An orbital strike, though, I don't know I know anyone on this planet that would go, oh yeah, let's chuck it down. And it was consistent. Like there was a last round of a map that he didn't use it in. Just had it and, you know, went out, took fights. They had info, never decided to use it. And at that point, to be honest, I was like, I kind of fucking get it because it hasn't done anything for them so far this whole game. So this whole series, it was so weird, man. It was so weird. It just, I think they had a lot of ideas in how to use it, but none of them came together at all.
I will say I want to talk about their icebox a little bit just because their composition is, I would say, weird in terms of what people are used to playing, because they actually brought a Brimstone to icebox and it was sick. I really enjoyed it. The defensive side from Chronicle was just ratty as hell. Like he basically just set up with one. You can see where he is right now. Look at where everybody is on the map. He's still deep within A, because basically they would put the Viper screen down as the initial contact, but he would just keep putting one ways down and just basically just play rat angles. And the amount of times he got multi-kills because no one is used to playing against one-ways on Icebox. It's just not something you're prepped for. And it meant that you had to keep taking unfavorable duels versus Chronicle, which you can barely win favorable duels versus Chronicle. So he just demolished them. And it also meant that, again, whenever you saw an orbital strike come through, you're like, holy shit, I've never had to deal with this on this map before, because he's just stopped our push.
He's just double smoked yellow here as well. So Dinks is
it's actually shit. I think it's very much viable. I think it's something that teams could legitimately run on this map. And considering how many, I want to say, failed attempts we've seen for people to move away from what was the same comp that we saw every single game, the fact that it actually looks like a Brimstone might work is really cool.
I think
wonder how much it has to do with the change of angle of that yellow container as well. Lets you actually smoke off that area more effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the box is there now, they won't have an angle around it. It definitely does.
Yeah.
It definitely has a contributing factor, because what I was going to say is the reason that I liked Brim here is because of how flexible he was. It wasn't like, oh yeah, they did the one ways, and so that was cool. They did the one ways and they had 10 different things that they couldn't have done without the Brim there. And so it was really interesting to see, like Tom said, breaking the mold that has been there for so long in how you're going to approach Icebox, and teams have had a tough time with figuring out any sort of alternative. This here, look at Redgar tagged up on the backside, and they didn't even know. What a way for it to finish.
Man. Okay, yeah, a very swingy sort of series here. Navi, I mean, look like they, they can definitely threaten a lot of these teams, but my God, they get blown out on some of their weaker maps, or at least on some of their opponents' stronger maps. So they got some depth to fill in.
Versus BBL, they 100% should have won the series. And I think that's the thing that's going to come back to bite them later on, is because you're now relying on beating a Guild and Liquid to have a chance to get into the playoff stage. Whereas basically they smashed BBL on Ascent, Icebox. I think they were up by a significant margin and then just lost.
They're about to
I
win.
think it was like 6 rounds in a row.
Mhm.
And it's one of those teams where it's like there's so much potential. Like Cloud is a ridiculously strong player. Like I think he's someone we have to keep an eye on. I think Zeddy as an addition hasn't been a bad one either. Like considering he's been slotted in, I think they have some cool supportive players. But it just seems like at any moment, either just mentally they switch off. Like again, if you go watch the Fracture game that they played versus BBL, it was trash. Like even though they got like a few rounds, they just got boomed. And it was like it wasn't like Kushner brought anything new to the table. It was the same sort of executions that people have stolen from OpTic on that map. And they just couldn't play it. And I'm like, okay, if you can't play versus what everyone's doing on Neon, I don't expect you to beat anyone on that map.
Let's cast our minds towards next week here. Because week 3, I think, is where we can start to get some teams sort of lock themselves in, or at least, put themselves in a position to, to sort of qualify through. I mean, like Team Liquid, Guild, Fnatic, and Acend can all qualify this week with sort of 3 wins.
And they're all against each other.
Well. All right.
And I like those.
So we got some
Top of the
standout
groups.
games here already on the face of it. My God, that Liquid Guild matchup, Fnatic Acend, that's pretty nasty.
Yeah.
Let's say
Yeah,
pretty plainly. G2 OG 2-0, right?
Yep.
Big Navi
to OG.
2 OG naturally hype is just going to come in and fucking slap these
O2
guys
then.
around. G2 don't have a clue what's going on. Big Navi, that's the game to decide who goes out essentially. Between Navi and Big, whichever one of you loses that, it's probably the one fucking going to relegation. So
Yeah.
you've got Liquid Guild to start with. That's going to determine who's guaranteed going out, making it through in Group B, going to playoffs. G2 are going to ruin OG. Navi versus Big, one of those fuckers is going home. At this point, don't really mind who it is. Fnatic versus Acend to determine who tops out Group A. Mech versus BBL, kind of a middling game, but that is for qualification as well. Realistically, those two teams are fighting for that 3rd, 4th spot right now. And then Fokus FPX. This is a chance for Fokus, who have looked so fucking good all the way along. As Tom said, OG London United game. The only team that can go out there right now is Fokus and OG London United. For Fokus to have a chance, they've got to take a win across the next 2. Otherwise, it's a risk that maybe OG in the next 3 weeks, that's a lot of time. With only 1 official to play per week, that is a lot of time. You do not want to be relying on OG still being this weak and on this poor of form 3 weeks from now.
Can we call them London United? Because
I'm okay with that, yeah.
This is sort of a joke, but at the same time, anyone who's played under the OG banner in Valorant has sucked. Go and look at any team. It's just the truth. Like, if you go back to any iteration,
you are talking about an
they've
org
done
that tried to
nothing.
build around AKM.
Imagine if Kenny S actually did get to play.
Jesus.
Yeah, then they might have been good, but even still, they would have needed a hard carry.
Yeah.
There's been so many weird roster moves with that team, but
Wait, did I say Kenny G?
the fact
or
that
Kenny
they
S?
basically had to just pick up another team and now they've got worse, I don't know.
Yeah,
what
it's
that says
a
about
curse at this point. Let's be honest. All right, so obviously highlighting a few matches. I think that the Fnatic versus Acend game promises to be pretty big. I think Fnatic, I mean, by my reckoning, they look like they're in pretty good shape. I mean, Icebox, you probably expect will feature in this series. We'll have a clash of styles, no doubt about it. We know Acend, they like to try this Reyna. I wonder if they'll try the Reyna on with Fnatic. That would be interesting to see how they play around that. They can
I
punish.
wonder if Alpha Air decides to go into Duelist as well. Coming into this game, especially Starzo, CNED.
please don't.
Like, you pull out something crazy for Alpha Air, maybe get your jet out or something. I don't know. It could be wild.
The thing is, you absolutely do
Reyna.
not need to, because in terms of the structure and strategy, only one team has a good comp going into this matchup. The other relies very heavily on individual performances.
Yeah.
So the fact is, Alpha can pop off. Like, they picked him up as a Sentinel because he's insane on the Sentinels.
Yeah.
It just happened that at that point, then Durka went, I don't want to play Raze. And so now he's playing Raze. That's the only reason that's happened. That's something Mini has said himself. So if this is a map where they can run him, like Durka playing on the Chamber and him playing on a Killjoy, there's so much. They should win this game just based off the fact that they can actually have some decent strats. And the fact that they've just watched how Acend play now, and it's basically just, okay, if we can just kill the guy who runs up A, we probably have a pretty good chance.
God, I would love to see a CNET Alpha Air fight, though. Reina versus Reina, have that chamber duel going on as well.
The Battle of
Turka and
Turkey.
Starzo. God, it would just be so much fun. But either way, I'm sure those duels are going to be something to witness. I think CNET's going to want to prove himself, though, against another, young star coming up from Turkey. You're going to try to take his limelight, maybe.
Kick him back down. Know your place.
Gotta pull the ladder up behind him, you know what I mean? Go get that bag. Okay, what about Guild versus Liquid here? I think, this group is a bit weird to me because, frankly, Mech a bit inconsistent. Navi also really swingy. I don't know if anyone is over the moon about Liquid's performance so far based on the strength of their opposition. So, yeah, it's a tabletopper matchup on the face of it. But both these teams have been a little bit weird to follow.
Well, I mean, Liquid literally has Yumpy hanging over them, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I know that some updates came out. I didn't actually get a chance to look at the interview with Yumpy about him going back to CS, but from what I understand, he is going back, right? He's leaving.
I think
Anybody know when?
I think it was vastly out of context. I think the point was he will consider going back to CS after they have won something. So
Right.
it's basically they have to win a
What?
championship for him to even think about it. And Sliggy came out and said the same. Like
Mhm.
their whole plan, even when he got unbanned very early, was we'll win a trophy, and then if you want to leave, then it's an option. And that was his plan. So I don't think there's
Right,
ever been I think it was just something he said on stream after Sliggy left was like, once I've done something here, I'll think about leaving. But I don't think it's like
Oh,
if
right.
by the
Yeah,
end of the
that's just an
year, I
offhand
don't think
comment.
it's
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's where my worry was at from what I heard going around that he had said he is going back. Fuck. Okay, well, what does that do to your team? You got some guy who's like, never mind, I'm gonna move to a different team. Just fuck this game, to be honest. Like you'd be like, wait, what? What? We got 3 weeks? Will you be here for the whole season? Are you here for Masters? What's going on? Yeah, that's completely different then. I think Liquid's form then, if they're looking for that championship, if they're looking for the trophy before Yampi can go back, it's almost exciting me more then because it changes the narrative from it being chaos in the roster, losing Sliggy, having Yumpy leaving, like new coach to come in, new ideas and all that. It could have been wild, but now it's something that can definitely build on for the future. I think that they're in a good spot, but this is the first real test that they're gonna have.
Yeah.
This is the first team that I would say has mass amounts of structure and will have done their research going into the game because I want to. This is the thing. Like Guild on the first day of the season are always the best team. Like that, I think that's been something that's consistently happened throughout. They beat some good teams. Last day of the season, I would say of the top teams, they're normally one of the worst. Like they almost lost to Supermassive Blaze, who literally couldn't beat anyone. So I'm a little bit skeptical going into the game, but I also think that they're never going to underestimate Liquid. They're going to have looked into all of the stuff they're doing recently. I think the only thing that can trump them is that Liquid is still have like the highest firepower of maybe anyone other than Mech. Like they've got just 5 fantastic players. You've got the likes of Navira, who I think was Sliggy was saying he reckons could be the best player in this entire game if he can hit his stride. But realistically, they've also got that just unknown of like they're switching things up so regularly. Like you've now got Soulcast going over to an Astra, you've got Scream playing the Raze, which he never played before. So it's possible they catch them off guard, but I would still favor Guild because I think overall they're the better team. It's just whether if Liquid have a good day, they're better than anyone, but it's so up and down.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's your recap, at least for EMEA, and now we know what we're heading into in week 3. Week 3, if you're not going to watch any EMEA, or if you're only going to be able to watch 1 week, this is definitely going to be the one. Some big matchups that are going to decide these teams that go through the playoffs. Remember, in Europe, it's even more cutthroat. Only 3 teams from each group make it through. That is absolute carnage right now. And as Europe looks to try and get everyone reshuffled and get their ducks in a row, it'll be a good time to keep an eye on some of these teams that we're not certain about. We'll talk about Guild, we'll talk about Liquid, so we'll see how that pans out. Tom, thanks for joining us, buddy. What's up with you? You and Mitch got some games this weekend, I hope.
Oh, well, you know, everybody loves an announcement, so I wouldn't want to ruin that. But we have been on every other week and maybe on every other week going forward, but I couldn't possibly say.
Yeah, forget it. That's right. Yeah, you guys have much less competition over in EU as opposed to fucking NA, where it's like a revolving door. Like people are like, oh yeah, I'm going full-time casting. I quote Bok here. Oh, Yeah, what are you doing, Bok? Oh, I've got 1 day next week. Oh, that's fucking great, Bok. Awesome. Yeah. Really glad that Ryder looking after your ass. Jesus fucking Christ. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back after the break. Thanks, obviously. Big shout out to Tom for joining us and giving us a bit more of a rundown on EMEA. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the mild controversy surrounding the Ask Valorant segment and maybe sort of how the expectations of the community maybe aren't being met or maybe they're not reasonable. Anyway, that'll all be happening here on the other side of these messages. Stick around.
If you've enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and make sure you hit the bell for the future noties, but also comment below with what you'd like to see in our future shows.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Valoranting. We've covered NA, we've covered EMEA in VCT. Now let's cover a little bit of the news that we saw this week. I think one of the biggest conversations going on in Valorant right now is probably just maybe around this disconnect between expectation and reality. You can blame that on communication as well, but the new Ask Valorant dropped, and people weren't particularly happy. Obviously, Ask Valorant's like a Q&A blog, answering some of the more prevalent questions, right? So talks about like a map pick and ban system, which is not being planned right now for comp because obviously it just makes it take much longer, I guess. A gifting system, obviously in the works. We know that is a thing in League of Legends right now. It gets abused all the time, but that's by the by. Among this, obviously, this is the interesting one. So any updates on an in-game replay system? So what's interesting is that, initially, guys, the devs were sort of saying they were interested in looking into the feasibility of it. At the moment, it looks like it's not a priority for them, which is interesting. So basically, our exploration is continuous against developing our other Valorant features, all to measure what makes the most sense to prioritize based on what serves the most players and has the most impact on game health. So this to me, I don't know what you guys think. This to me sort of reads as like it's not important enough to us right now to prioritize. What do you think about that? I mean, we don't really have I guess I am the most casual standpoint on Valorant in this conversation, but it's pretty hard to bring in someone, that doesn't care about esports onto the show and ask them how they feel about this. What do you guys reckon about the priority or lack thereof that Riot give to a feature like this?
I think so. I've had some conversations in the background that I can probably bring into this. We've spoken to some of the people from Barracks, which is a system that basically provides the heads-up display, the HUD for like Masters events and stuff like that. Anything you see in VCT, it's not the in-game HUD. It's a custom one. So for them, they have to work with the game. They have to work with like the devs, and they gave me a lot of insight into the creative process of Valorant, which is big, right? In the scope of how many different companies or like effective companies, because it's all across the world, and Riot Global and the dev team themselves, and how it sort of segments down. For example, if someone comes in and goes, I want to make the replay system, obviously it ain't that simple. It requires a lot. And I think the problem that they're facing is that they want a replay system. They want that objectively. If they could click their fingers and have it, they'd have it. But my assumption is, because the attitude has changed so much and taken such a pivot, I think they probably did look into the feasibility of it and realized that developing it, whether it was too intensive or required, my guess is that it probably had too many knock-on effects. Like if they build this, maybe it breaks this thing, maybe it breaks that thing, and it's just, for right now, resource-wise, they don't think it's worth putting in that much. They want to develop a different wing of it. I saw a lot of people that seem to take it as them saying, oh, fuck it, we're not bothered making it, we don't think it's important. I don't think it's that. I think they understand that it's an important tool for us to have, but whatever has happened behind the scenes makes it not something that if they were to focus on it now, then something else would suffer, right? Something more important would suffer. So I guess that's what it is, kind of a not enough hours in the day type thing, but it's really fucking disappointing. Really disappointing if we're not going to have replays.
I definitely do see that as not enough hours in a day. Because if you're looking at the current state of the game, I think, MitchMan, you're right. When you're looking at the UI, sometimes it's bugged out. We're casting it and we're like, what the fuck? The UI is still fucking up. The score is not counting right. So I think trying to fix that to make sure that from a spectator's point of view for the live events is good to go for Masters 3, let alone even Champions, where in that conversation, they were planning to have a crowd, hopefully, for Masters 2, sorry, and then also for Champions. So if that's going to be the forefront, we got to make sure that the viewer's experience is going to be the best in terms of being able to watch that from a live perspective. And to get those going in, and not enough manpower is definitely one thing. I do get the point of view from like the pros are like, well, we're spending like 20 hours a day trying to do lineups here for Silva, trying to do lineups for KO and stuff like that too, and all of that is just going to get like thrown out the window in terms of now they always have to be back on the drawing board every single time. But comments like this, even coming from pros, and I agree with that as well. I think this is also very good. For example, myself, War Owl, that's been waiting for a long time, and anybody else that wants to build content for educational purposes, for bait clicks, and making fun content around the game, it actually brings a new community into it as well. I think it will welcome new viewers to understand the game a lot better, especially when you're going into full executes and you're like, what the fuck is going on? And if you're not playing the game, or you stop playing the game for 6 months and there's new agents coming in and you don't know what the hell's going on, I think that's a great other aspect to help those new viewers and the casual gamers to still understand and learn about the game. So there's a lot of pros about it. I guess the con is more on the pro side, but I do agree that it should be coming hopefully sometime soon. I don't think it's off the books in terms of not wanting to create the replay system.
The one thing I'll say as well is that from a professional standpoint, I know a lot of pros are somewhat happy about it still being concealed, like the top
Exactly.
level guys, mainly because they're right. It means you can't look into if an official game happens and someone does that lineup. Well, now that team's got to spend 2 hours sitting there trying to figure out what it was, unless the observer caught it, right? So I know for a lot of them they'll be happy enough with that, but it really is something that as soon as a replay system comes out, as soon as you put a tool like that into the player's hands, not just on a professional level, but across the board, gameplay will get better. People will understand the game better. They'll have the tools to sit back and go, why the fuck did I lose that? How come every time I, do this thing, it doesn't work out? And then they'll go back and they'll watch the replay. I remember I used to do that. I used to hold like Dust 2, B-site hold. You go back and watch the VODs and go, okay, when I do this smoke, what the fuck are they doing? Because I thought they would fall back or they would do this. And instead, someone kills me every time. And you realize those little mistakes in your play, you refine them. And if that's what it does to, the gold players out there, you can only imagine what it's going to do to the Radiant.
Maybe if you code it so that if the gun is starting to or an ability is starting to look into sky, then it's just coded so that you can't POV that, something
shit.
dumb like that.
hell?
No, but in the end, that was a tinfoil take. But in the end, like I think even when you're looking at, for example, Counter-Strike, that has had a replay system in GoTV for the longest time, and
It's
you
a bit
have
janky,
like for
though.
example, we're playing Mirage and we're playing a 5-man stack. We already know how to do the A smokes because they've been watching pro plays and the smokes never really change. But mechanically, the rest of the game still looks pretty good and very competitive. So in a sense, yeah, it might suck for the people that are spending hours and hours for the lineups, but I think it could still become very competitive games despite people knowing these lineups against you. You have a level of freshness from getting lineups that other teams don't have, but if they do have it at some point, now it's just like you got to play better, and I think that's gonna even level up like the skill level and the matches that we were gonna get between the teams.
I think, yeah, people were probably pretty disenfranchised because I think back in 2020, there was an Ask Valorant that said, yes, like there would be a replay system. So it definitely seems like it was explored and then realized that maybe the sort of cost benefit wasn't quite there. I want to say as well, we're 2 years in. It took longer than that to get that in Overwatch. I know that's not a barometer you want to use, but we were all gagging for it in Overwatch. People were being obnoxious about it towards the devs, and we got it. And it was great, but like it took an unreal amount of dev resources to produce that. It's almost like creating another game in a sense. There's a hell of a lot that goes into putting together a replay system. And now we use it for a lot of cinematic stuff on the broadcast. Plenty of content could be created from that as well. We're yearning for it again in Overwatch 2. Obviously, they don't have that in Overwatch 2 yet, but it is really handy. I would suggest that there wasn't quite as much content created with the replay viewer as I would have expected. Most content creators still use first-person footage. So I think Ye's tweet there is fair, but I don't know just how much we would actually see content created with this. I mean, you can do it, I'm sure, but yeah, I was a little underwhelmed by what was done with the Overwatch one, and the functionality was really quite very good with our replay viewers. So people are mad about it. There was a tweet longer about it. I mean, from one of the Riot devs. I just thought this was pretty interesting. So here's what people expect from their game devs. When people complain about something not being there, they expect it to be there, right? The response here from Mr. Gilferson, excuse me if I've butchered the last name, who, by the way, seems to be allergic to fucking capitalization and the Oxford comment, but that's fine. He's sort of saying, like, you know, we want to give you more reasons to get excited for the future. We want to give you a bit more of an insight, but this is not saying, hey, you're not getting a replay viewer. And people were kind of mad. I just kind of find it funny. People expect that when they get mad, they get what they want, which is, I guess it's unfortunate that that's been something that's been reinforced. You're not getting your fucking replay viewer, guys. You're going to have to wait potentially a fair bit longer. And I also think that Riot have hedged themselves into this corner by having such an aggressive rotation of content they're adding to the game. And with the size of their team, I just don't really think at this time it's feasible.
I still think it's pretty cool though that Riot were, you know, transparent in terms of the conversations and answering the questions. It doesn't always have to be butterflies and fucking unicorns, you know? I think understanding where the game is headed towards, what they're trying to do with the game, and being open and honest about that, I think it's pretty cool. And, you know, all the news that comes out, it doesn't always have to be good news.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, just like Bala has. And
yeah, I think also think like,
awesome.
You know, nice to see Bala sort of being encouraging there. I also think that I can't take too many things. If when I see NA Valorant casters tweet at NA Valorant devs, I can't take it that seriously because A, it's interactions, and B, y'all don't want to lose your job because you're competing with 40 other people for the same fucking gig to do one day a week. So like, you know, I see you guys out there kissing ass. All right, I feel for you.
Well, what happened? I'm missing something here.
Yeah, I hate to see people I respect being put in such a position of not that I think Bala is being overly subservient here. I'm just saying it's a trend that I've noticed. A lot of gassing
I'm just tweeting out at you because I want to play Ninja Turtles with him once that game comes out. So
yeah, I mean, you're also an outlier, I think, in this scenario, Vans, where you'd probably kiss ass regardless of whether your job was on the line or not.
I don't kiss ass.
So,
I like friendship,
right.
friendship, respect.
Yes,
I'm ready to be friends.
All right. We had some funny tech glitches this week. I feel like this is
Didn't we?
I want to explore this a little bit more. So first of all, Sideshow was on the desk, and he's obviously getting ready to do a analysis segment. And boom, PC with the old Windows. I thought you can configure. I thought you can like stop the fucking thing from updating on you, but that's unfortunate. Yeah, that would cause Josh to probably miss the desk segment. At least some of it. I thought this was even funnier. I'm going to let this clip speak for itself. So roll this one. Roll this motherfucker. This is great.
Cloud sneaking above. That's perfect, but he's caught.
So but Tom, I don't know what you're seeing. I don't know what the people at home are seeing, but
the best part is that the API is still feeding to the overlay. So
yeah, but see, that's the simple part. First off, I think that MitchMan built the momentum perfectly. You know, like the pacing, the tonalities coming up, and it's perfect for the crash. So there's a crash, and then what you should have done was going back into like 2003 when you were casting off a Godfrag score bot on MRC when you didn't have access to GoTV. So you're just reading off the kills and still pretending like nothing happened, and then you still look fine.
That could have worked if the UI wasn't broken every second round. If it wasn't, if I could trust the UI, like 90%.
That's why
of the
we don't have
time,
replay systems, chat. We're still looking to fix the UI.
Dude, it's true. Like, this is the thing I think a lot of people don't understand. Right now, we have like, it's been like a year to push the latency from 3 seconds to like 1.2 between the HUD and the game, so that like the game feed needs to be, from what I understand, the game feed needs to be delayed on your screens so that the HUD can read the data and then play it out in time. They have to like set an like plus minus on the HUD, so sometimes the HUD will be ahead, sometimes it'll be slightly behind. They've got to adjust that, and there's so much shit going on behind the scenes because the game is so new that there's so many different areas that need to be streamlined and that need to have like for right now, our systems for showing the hood and our system for running the server, they don't shake hands well. We're having like a fucking fist fight the whole time.
Yeah.
And we need, over time, the devs will be working on it, and software is a bitch sometimes. It's hard to get that shit to shake hands properly. So it'll take some time. But yeah, when I see the hood up there, I don't trust it. I wait till I can see the player. I can see the server.
I also had we've had some weird pick ban data coming off that HUD as well. Sometimes we've had to refer to the raw data from the Discord. I just thought it was funny. Yeah, it looks like it's like the same update is affecting people across the world at the moment. It happens, you know what I mean? I literally had to cast a full round without audio on the Overwatch League broadcast, but that can't be blamed on just a benign update. That's actually just negligence on the production side. So not quite the same, but still kind of funny.
Now for a map.
yeah, that's how it is. Next week, we have our qualifying. We have qualifying situations for a lot of our teams in NA and EU. So well worth checking in with those games, or alternatively, check in with us afterwards. Tuesday, 11 a.m. PT, we're going to be back here again, talking about week 3 of VCT, EMEA, and NA. I'm Ibba Shouts, you with Van Silly and MitchMan. Thanks for being here with us. We'll see you next week. It's been a pleasure as always.